when you're ready to begin.
Okay, thank you. Just give me half a sec here, actually. Okay, I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores for July 13th, 2026. Welcome all members, everyone joining us in the gallery this evening, and everyone watching us via the live stream. We're glad everybody is with us. The second item on the agenda is the land acknowledgement, and I'll read that this evening. We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation. We understand this land holds immense significance to the people of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for the contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation, to acknowledging the truth about what happened to Indigenous peoples because of colonization, and to reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. As a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their people, and we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path to healing along with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. The third item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Ask any member if you have one of those you'd like to declare at this time. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. We have no additions, deletions, or amendments. That moves on then to the minutes. And I have a resolution that council adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of June 15th, 2026 and June 22nd, 2026 as presented. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Helpman, seconded by the Vice Deputy Mayor. Any discussion to those minutes? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that the minutes were taken back and some corrections or additions or just adjustment was made. I understand that the minutes are not verbatim records of what goes on at our meetings. However, just a couple of comments. I'm not prepared to not vote for this tonight, but I noticed that in the minutes that we have before us tonight, in comparison to last time, individual members of council are mentioned and various questions that we asked and clarification and response is noted in the minutes. However, what the minutes do not include are the comments that you made. So there are lots of references to all of us, but you said some very relevant things too during that meeting, and they weren't picked up by the minutes. I think that if it is important at times to indicate who said what, that, it should be who said what for all of us. I also just want to note that in the minutes that we have before us tonight, there was comments related to the Margaret Lawrence Co-op made by me, and also Councillor Mayette is mentioned in the minutes as asking for some clarification. And the response noted says that the Margaret Lawrence Cooperative had been introduced previously, and then the minutes go on to say that staff said information could be provided and could be circulated. A little bit further along in the minutes, there was questions when we got to the co-op letter of intent, where a question was asked of Mr. Welsh relating to the Margaret Lawrence Cooperative as well. And the minutes reflect that Mr. Welsh could be asked to provide materials on the consortium. There was further reference to how we heard about this in October. I actually went back and viewed the recording of our October 14th meeting, and I'll just say that there was no mention of the Margaret Lawrence Cooperative during that meeting, and other players and partners were not mentioned. The first time I heard about this was at the park planning meeting. At that October the 14th meeting, we talked about 140 units, which hence the questions at the June 22nd meeting, how did we go from 140 up to 180, 183? But also at the October 14th meeting, what we voted on was we approved Mr. Welsh's company to design and construct the project. There was nothing in that meeting that had to do with the partners involved. So I would respectfully ask, and I'm not planning to vote against the minutes, but it is noted in the minutes that information could be provided and could be circulated, and Mr. Welsh could provide materials related to the consortium, I really think that they should be provided. So I hope that is followed through. But again, in the future, if it becomes important or necessary that very specific members of council get mentioned as asking a question or that sort of thing, that if the mayor chooses to comment, I would like to see that in the minutes too, because this is the record. And going forward, when we have some projects of a bigger nature or projects that have been very interesting and attracted a lot of attention, I think the record is very important for a tracking of decisions and that sort of thing. Thank you for letting me speak about the minutes.
Of course, do you have any comments, the clerk?
Thank you, Mayor Charbonneau, through you to Deputy Mayor. Our practice for minutes is without note or comment as per our procedural bylaw and Robert's Rules of Order. For items such as public meetings, we do often provide more description. What we had done is went back and provided that description. I apologize that we missed some of the mayor's comments in doing so. I would like to note that part of the record that we keep for meetings are the recordings, which are available for the public at any time to view and hear comments. And a final comment that it will not be our standard practice moving forward without specific direction to provide such descriptive minutes. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on the minutes? If not, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, so now we're on to public meetings. We have two of those this evening. The first one is a public meeting for draft plan of subdivision S-2024-002 and zoning bylaw amendment Z-2026-023. This is a public meeting under the Planning Act. If anyone from the public is interested in this application or wishes to receive a notice of the decision, please send an email to bcplpe@brucecounty.on.ca. First, we will receive a report from planning staff. Then we will hear from the public who are here in person, virtually, or who have submitted correspondence to the email address I just mentioned. Each individual will be given one opportunity to speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Then council members will have an opportunity to ask questions, and I'll ask them to reserve their comments on the application until after we've heard from the public. Members of the public are advised that the right to appeal the decision on this application is limited to specified persons and public bodies as defined in the Planning Act, or the owner or applicant of the land subject to the amendment, who have provided oral or written comments to council on the application before the decision is made. After we've heard from the public, council will discuss and consider a recommendation on this application. So I will now declare the public meeting to be open, and I'll ask the planner on the file to present the application, and the planner on this file is Julie Steeper. Ms. Steeper.
Thank you. Good evening. This file should look familiar. This draft plan of subdivision was presented at a public meeting in September 2024. Since that time, the overall layout has remained largely the same, with 4 commercial blocks, 1 multi-residential block, and 1 stormwater management block. The main change is that the proposed municipal road has been modified to a private road. The remaining technical matters have been addressed through the draft plan conditions and will be finalized through the subdivision agreement. Block 6 is proposed to be rezoned to open space to reflect its use as a stormwater management pond. The amendments for Block 2 and 3 are intended to recognize the existing site layout and formalize a shared parking arrangement. More specifically, Block 2 would be permitted to rely on 3 parking spaces located on Block 3. Relief is requested for lot frontage and the front yard depth for Block 3. Because the private road is included with the block, it changes how the frontage and the setback are measured. The request is intended to recognize the existing site configuration and the proposed block layout. A public comment was received and provided and expressed a concern with the anticipated increased traffic and possible congestion that may result from the proposed development. Godrich Street entrance is to be designed and constructed as a right-in and a right-out only entrance with no left turn. The traffic study concluded that there will be no adverse impact. Staff are satisfied that the proposal has addressed the subdivision criteria. From a policy perspective, the application is considered consistent with the provincial planning statement and conforms to both county and local official plans. Staff recommend that council approve the application subject to the draft plan conditions. And this concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the report. So now we'll hear from members of the public. So I'll ask first if the applicant or their agent is present and wishes to speak. Yep, come on up and introduce yourself for the record. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Dave Aston with MHBC Planning. Thanks for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor and Council, to be here this evening to speak to the draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment. Also want to share our appreciation to Ms. Steeper, Ms. Ham for working with us through the application process and resolving the issues and concerns that have been identified, which were very minimal from the town and the agencies throughout the process, to be here this evening with a recommendation for approval report. We're here this evening in support of the recommendations as presented for the recommendation to support the plan of subdivision and the draft approval conditions that are contained within the report for county approval, and to approve the zoning bylaw amendment, which in our opinion is very minor in the context of the applications really reflecting an existing condition as it relates to the setback for the hotel. And then the shared parking is something that's been considered and designed as part of the site plan applications for the commercial land. So it's really implementing something that's been considered through a detailed review process. Again, in our opinion and shared opinion with the planner, is that the applications are consistent with the provincial policy statement and conform to the official plans of the county and the town. And we're here this evening to request that you support the recommendations identified in the report and in your agenda this evening, and happy to respond to any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any others representing the applicant who wish to speak? If not, then we will ask if there are any members of the public who wish to speak either in support of the application or with questions, concerns, or objections to the application. Any members of the public present today who wish to speak to this application? Don't see anybody jumping up. I'll just ask the clerk, are there any written submissions that were not already discussed in the planning report presentation or oral submissions?
Thank you, Mayor Charbonneau. There were none.
Okay, so I'll ask one more time, just in case. Does anybody in the room wish to speak to council on this application? I don't see anybody. So we'll now ask members of council if you have any questions at this time with respect to this application. Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the agency comments, Grey Bruce Public Health made statements about healthy environments, recommending open green space and park areas, a shade structure, etc. What is the minimum amount of green space for this development?
Planner?
If I may, through you, Mayor, the highway commercial zone allows for or has a minimum landscaped open space percentage requirement of 30% of the total lot area.
Follow up on that. And is this going to fulfill that minimum?
Planner?
If I may, through you, Mayor, the intent is that that would be facilitated through site plan control. Yes.
Okay, I have another question, please. One of the town's comments references a proposed public road being changed to a private road. And so I was wondering if there are going to be any repercussions in terms of individuals who are accessing that road or maybe located on that road having access to public services or not access to public services.
The planner?
If I may, through you, Mayor, the proposed townhouse units will have direct access off Devonshire Road. The private road, in this case with the block subdivision is going to facilitate access to the lots for the commercial blocks. So it's not necessarily for the multi-residential block, just for the commercial blocks.
That's it. Any further questions? Questions from the members? Vice Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll have some comments afterwards too, supporting this. No, it's a public meeting right now, but I'm just wondering, from a traffic congestion standpoint, am I clear that all of the appropriate traffic studies have taken place? We talk about 125 stacked townhouses and, you know, 3 new businesses again and all the businesses at the front. It's going to be a lot of traffic on Devonshire, but I think all that's been looked after a long time ago, correct? That Devonshire is going to be an extremely busy road, that the transportation aspect of it all been looked after long ago.
Planner?
If I may, through you, Mayor, yes, the study was conducted with previous applications, which has indicated that there is no concerns or it doesn't require any mitigating measures.
Okay. Yeah, Vice Deputy Mayor? Don't forget your microphone there.
Block 4, this to Mr. Aston, I guess, that block 4, would that be able to accommodate 3 or 4 new businesses in that new block? Is that what's being planned there in Devonshire?
The planner? The applicant?
Through Mayor to Deputy Mayor. Block 4 currently is to be determined for commercial uses, but it could be one user or it could be kind of a CRU pad as well that could accommodate multiple uses. So there's some flexibility left and to be considered under Block 4.
And Mr. Mayor, I know this isn't part of the application, I'm going to ask it anyways, if I could. Tim, or Dave, at the westerly end side of the property across, like on Waterloo Street, those residents on the west side of the road, goes back a year or 2 now, I think, maybe 3 years ago, where they really asked some point blank questions about enhanced landscaping plan and buffering on the west side. I know it's not really, but while you're here, I hope I can indulge you in that question. Can you just talk a little bit about the landscape plan on Devonshire and Waterloo?
Absolutely. Through the mayor to Deputy Mayor, along Waterloo Street, the way the plan is designed and the orientation, just to give some ideas, the zoning would require a minimum setback of 4.5 meters. The plan right now actually has enhanced that. So there's about 8 meters along Waterloo Street because of the shape of the lot and the corner at the roundabout. It's 6 meters at that corner. But the intent along Waterloo Street is to have street tree planting, which would kind of mirror the design throughout the town for street tree planting, and then an additional setback it would, in most cases there, it would be to the side of buildings. So the design has also minimized kind of the rear of buildings looking on to Waterloo and into the residential across the street.
Thank you for allowing me to ask that question. I think that when you're talking about including site-specific positions, permit block 2 to utilize 3 parking places from block 3 just makes good sense and something I'm going to get behind, obviously. So thank you for all the great work. That's a really great development there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions from the members? Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. When Councillor Grace asked the question about the private road, the road being converted from public road to private road, what was the trigger? And this is to the planner, I think. What was the trigger that made that a private road? Is it the width of the road? The reason why it wasn't assumed by the town, or won't be assumed by the town?
The planner?
So perhaps maybe the town can speak to that. I would maybe direct that question to Kate Sam.
Yeah, the manager of development.
Thank you for the question. So during the preliminary feedback that came back from town staff, the consideration was that the road in its current configuration, it's already been built. There's already municipal services that have been installed there. But it was the opinion of staff that it wasn't going to contribute greatly to the overall town's road network, that it really would just service these blocks in particular. And so it was the opinion that if there was an opportunity for that road to remain private, that was the preference of staff, and the developer has conceded to that.
The counselor?
Yes, thank you for a follow-up. So the road has not been assumed by the municipality yet. We're just deciding that we're not going to assume it. And so I guess it'll have to be plowed in the snow, in the wintertime. And I think it was alluded to that there would be no municipal services, garbage collection and things like that.
The manager?
Yes, that's correct. It will be a private road. So all of the roads that are contained within this subdivision will be private. So there is one private road that services the hotel that will service the commercial blocks as well. Then there's also condominium development that will have private internal roadways.
Okay, Counselor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I missed that, the internal roads servicing the condominiums. Will there be a warning, an alert, notification included in any sales agreements that there will not be publicly provided recycling, et cetera?
The manager?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. Yes, that messaging was very clear in some of the other discussions that have happened at the council tables. So when a condominium exemption application is filed, there will be information presented back to indicate that as part of those warning clauses that appear in the agreements under the condo corp, that the town is requesting that certain verbiage related to that is included. And we can also, through the site plan control process, ask for those notes to be added to the site plan as well, just to make that clear in every possible location that is the scenario for the condominium development.
Thank you. Are there further questions from the members? I don't see any further questions from the members. So with that, I'll now declare the public meeting to be closed. Was there an individual, before I close the public meeting, is there anybody else from the public who wishes to speak to this application? Sir, you do? Okay, come on up, sir. Give us your name for the record. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, yes, my name is Jerry Murphy. Address is 1050 Waterloo Street. Apologize for missing your first call. I'm here tonight regarding the zoning bylaw and site plan for the multifamily residential block. I know that's not directly being discussed yet, but it's part of the parcel that's subject to the application. So I guess everything's opened up again for comment and some decision by council. Two things. One relates to the height of the multifamily residential. And I'd like to ask council to reconsider the maximum height that the zoning permits. And given that on the north side of Devonshire, that all of the existing development is 1 and 2 stories, that the maximum height be no more than 3 stories to reflect the existing heights in that area of the intersection. The second relates to traffic, and it's signage for traffic. And signage at the traffic circle. I've talked to the town a couple of times, and things just seem to go one way and I don't hear anything back. So I thought I'd use this opportunity to suggest that the town look at signage at the traffic circle. One, the sign indicating not to pass cyclists is only in one direction, should be in 4 directions. 4 directions should also have signs, I think, asking vehicles to either yield or stop for pedestrians. There's lots of occasions where that doesn't happen. So those are 2 requests, height on the multifamily, to reconsider that if you would, and impose maximum of 3, and on the circle to look at signage from a pedestrian perspective.
Okay, thank you for those comments.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions at this stage from the members, the deputy mayor?
Um, can I just ask the question? They're stacked townhouses. What is the height that is being anticipated for those units?
The planner?
In fact, I might direct that question to the applicant.
Sure. The agent for the applicant.
Thank you, Mayor, to the councillor. The stacked townhouse is more along the lines of 3 stories now, maybe 3.5, depending on how you look at grade, relative to those types of units. So the bylaw as it was approved by council a few years ago permitted apartments up to a height of 6 stories. But the current design for the stacked townhouses is 3.5 stories. So it's lower than what the zoning currently permits.
The deputy mayor?
So when you say 3.5 stories, you mean a 4-story building with 1 story sunk into the ground? Is that what you're describing?
The
Through
agent for the
Mayor,
applicant.
it would be a 3-story with a half in the ground.
Okay. Any further questions? Councillor Grace?
Yeah, just as a follow-up to Mr. Murphy's comment about the signs, how will we go forward on that?
Maybe I could look to the manager of development to give us some thoughts on how staff can take that away.
Sure, thank you for the question. That's something that I would take back as part of the development service team. We have our engineering department, and we can also consult with our operations department to see if there's adequate signage there and if there is a requirement for more signage to be added.
Okay. Further questions, Councillor Stack?
So can you just clarify, when you say a requirement, do you mean a legal requirement or based on the feedback, there's a necessity to add more signage? I'm just not clear what we mean by requirement.
Sure, the manager.
My apologies, I would seek clarification from the different departments that actually have more expertise in this area. So if I've misspoken by saying the word required, I'm not sure if I can answer that specifically today. I would potentially see if the Director of Development Services has anything further to add.
Anything, the director?
No, I have nothing further to add to the manager's comment. We can take that back certainly and discuss it with our operations and engineering team.
Okay. Any further questions? The Vice Deputy Mayor?
Just a quick question, Mr. Aston. I'm just wondering the 108 units, the 3.5 story, are those 3-bedroom then? I guess they're probably 3-bedroom, 1,600 square feet. Do you have those numbers for me? I'm just curious.
The agent for the applicant?
Through the mayor, I don't have those exact numbers in front of me. There'll be 2 bedrooms for sure. I don't know if there's a mix in 3 bedrooms in there. But it's not all, it's a difference of not all being 1 bedrooms. I don't have the details of those numbers with me tonight. But certainly at minimum, there'll be 2-bedroom units and maybe plus a den. I'm just not sure on the percentage of 3-bedroom units.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from the members? Anybody else before I close this public meeting? Anybody else one more time in the public who wishes to speak to the application? Okay, I'm now going to declare the public meeting to be closed. And I'm going to read the recommendation, and it is that council requests that the county approves approval authority approve draft plan of subdivision S-2024-002 Lord Elgin Estates in accordance with the draft plan and conditions of draft approval attached. And that council approves zoning bylaw amendment Z-2026-023 and bylaw 74-2026 as attached. And the council resolved that no further notice is necessary with respect to the minor change in the proposed zoning bylaw amendment in accordance with the provisions of section 3417 of the Planning Act. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Halpin. Are there any discussion from the members? I'll start with Councillor Mayette and come around.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, maybe to the planner. I know this site is outside of the area that is currently being contemplated for the community permitting and planning system. But if it were, and if we had a community planning permit system in place, is this the type of application that would be subject to that CPPS if we had one?
Do you want to answer the manager of development services?
Thank you for the question. So the draft plan of subdivision, no, the county is the approval authority for that. But when we're looking at both the zoning bylaw amendment and the site plan process to facilitate, those could be combined into one permit process if those CPPS was in effect and applied to this area.
Okay, the deputy mayor and then Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. It's kind of a question with a comment. It was just mentioned that this is a change from an original approval that was for a 6-story high building. By doing what we're doing tonight, it doesn't mean that there can be a change again that would push the height back up. We're now talking about 3.5 stories. That's it. So if it was desirable to adjust it again, that would have to come back here. Is that correct?
The manager.
So what was described by the planner for the applicant is that there are height specifications in the bylaw. In particular, this area is subject to Schedule C in the zoning bylaw that allows for the increase in height. So there are no restrictions that would prevent somebody from not being able to revise the proposal again. But what I can indicate, and perhaps the applicant may want to comment further, is that we are in the depths of negotiating the site plan control agreement for the site for the townhouse development. And so I don't anticipate that there are further changes as that is advancing quite quickly.
The deputy mayor.
And thank you for that, Candace. I was appreciative of the vice deputy mayor mentioning about landscaping along Waterloo. We've seen various renditions of both of these projects in the last couple of months or maybe a year. Street trees are important, so I really like that there was a response about consideration of the merits and what landscaping can do. Today was a hot day. People were purposefully, people I encountered walking on the side of the road that had trees on it because it was a little bit cooler. I just want to mention, we likely, I don't know if we will have any involvement further with site plans, but landscaping along the highway is significant too, because it is almost a gateway access kind of property heading into downtown Port Elgin. So whatever opportunities are there to make that look good. And we did see something already, I know, but whatever opportunities to make it look good are very appreciated because it does make the community stand out as just a great place. And it makes those businesses, in fact, more attractive too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I look back in our notes, and so for the commercial space for the site plan provided to us, the one has 31.5% green space and the other one has 33.5% green space. So they do have nice green spaces around them. The stacked townhouses for the site plan presented on February 17th of 2026 shows a 37% landscape space and quite nice landscaping and interior trail areas. And so it's going to have an answer to kind of the question about the health unit. It will be a very walkable community. It'll be a very nicely landscaped and connected to all the trails that go through that subdivision. So yeah, I think it'll be a nice addition and a nice addition to our housing mix. Thank you.
Thank you. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be supporting the recommendation. I just wanted to say to Dave Aston, your group, whether it's the Holiday Inn or Stay Ridge or any other development you've touched, you've done a fabulous job in this community. And I know when we talk about enhanced landscaping plan, that's going to happen. I have full confidence that will happen along Waterloo Street in Devonshire. I think it's really important. And not only to the community, to council, but to you as the developer, because you want to make it look and feel right, and with lots of shade. And I think landscaping is really, really important. So I know he won't let us down on that. And I know we were stripped from a lot of our say in site plan control, and I'm wading into that. But I think it's really important, you know, from council standpoint, that we really appreciate that 37% lot coverage with green space with the next phase. And you know, we talk about in behind 3 Sheets property there. We just unveiled some townhomes there, 2-bedroom, and some Habitat for Humanity homes and affordable housing units, and in about the $390,000 range, what we call the missing middle. I'm not sure you're gonna be able to do it for that with 3-bedroom, but I think these 108 units are gonna be a welcome addition to this community, and I think you'll find that, I mean, I'm not an expert, and you are, but I think these things are gonna fly off the shelf because hopefully the pricing is right, and you can't buy too much in this community from a new home perspective for less than $800,000. I'm sure there's a few in the sevens, but certainly the ones that we're talking about with the Wilson development at 390, you know, those 22 are gonna fly off the shelves too. So I hope the pricing is right, and this is great for a community. I know you're gonna look after the landscaping, and I think that that interior road change is good, and I just like all the changes and full support of it. And thanks again, Dave, for the good work you and your partners are doing.
Thank you. Are there any further comments from the members before I call the question? Seeing none, then it's moved and seconded. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our second public meeting. Just give me half a sec to reset here. Okay, so next on the agenda is a public meeting for Local Official Plan Amendment L-2026-008 and Community Planning Permit Bylaw Z-2026-038 for the Community Permit Planning System. This is a public meeting under the Planning Act. If anyone from the public is interested in this application or wishes to receive a notice of the decision, please send an email to bcplpe@brucecounty.on.ca. First, we will receive a report from planning staff. Then we will hear from the public who are here in person, virtually, or who have submitted correspondence to the email address I just read. Everyone will be afforded one opportunity to speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Then council members will have an opportunity to ask questions, and of course, I'll ask them to reserve any comments until after the public meeting is closed. Members of the public are advised that the right to appeal the decision on this application is limited to specified persons and public bodies as defined in the Planning Act, or the owner or applicant of the land subject to the amendment who have provided oral or written comments to council on the application before the decision is made. After we've heard from the public, council will discuss and consider a recommendation on this application, and I'll just note this evening, the recommendation on this application is to receive it for information. And after the public meeting, of course, council will consider that resolution. So I now declare the public meeting to be open, and I'll ask the planner on the file to present the application, and the planner on this file is Karina Smith. Ms. Smith.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So as indicated, the town of Saugeen Shores has submitted a local official plan amendment and a community planning permit bylaw in support of their proposed community planning permit system. The purpose of this public meeting is to present the proposal to council and to obtain feedback from council and the community. No decision is being requested of council this evening. At a later date, staff will present a recommendation report, which will also address comments arising from this meeting. So just as a bit of background, a community planning permit system is a planning tool available under the Planning Act. It allows municipalities to combine zoning bylaw amendment, minor variance, and site plan control processes into one application. The CPPS, that's the short form. Sorry if I jump into an acronym occasionally. The community planning permit system is designed to make development approval process more efficient and accessible. Municipalities can tailor the system to meet their specific needs and circumstances. Bruce County Official Plan does enable the use of a community planning permit system throughout the county. All designations within the county or local official plans may be community planning permit areas as established through bylaw. The county official plan notes that a community planning permit system may be used to implement the goals, objectives, and policies of either the county official plan or the local official plan. And it further identifies the council of the local municipality as the approval authority for the community planning permit. As it relates to the local official plan amendment before council this evening, under the requirements of the community planning permit system, the town must adopt an official plan policy or policies to establish the location, aims, and criteria of the proposed system. In 2022, the town of Saugeen Shores undertook a review of potential use of this system in the town. And there was a report prepared by Hurdle Planning Consultants in that year, which was presented and endorsed by council. In December of 2023, Town Council adopted an amendment to its official plan to enable the community planning permit system, which was subsequently approved by Bruce County in 2024. So just to reiterate, the community planning permit system is already enabled in both the Bruce County official plan and the town official plan. But the intent of the current amendment before council is to amend some of those policies, to add to those, and to identify the core commercial designations specifically in Port Elgin and Southampton as a community planning permit system area. All new development in these areas would be regulated by the community planning system bylaw, which is also before council. In response to the circulation and posted notice for these applications, the county has received over 160 public comments or requests to be notified of these applications. Agency comments have also been received, most notably those provided by the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, who did provide feedback and some recommendations as it relates to the floodplain, specifically in the Southampton area. These comments will be reviewed with town staff and the consulting team and included in a future report to council. Comments received to date are attached to my report, including those provided by the public received up to this afternoon, as well as agency comments received so far. That concludes my presentation. I know the consultant does have additional presentation for council this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. So yes, we'll hear now a presentation from the applicant or their agent, in this case, the agent for the applicant, and you come up, introduce yourself, and you have 5 minutes.
Hello, good evening. My name is Andrew Davidge. I'm a planner with Gladkey Planning. We are the project lead for this project, and we've been joined by Hurdle Planning and Code Studio in working for the town to create a community planning permit bylaw and an official plan amendment. I understood I had 10 minutes. I can keep it to 5. It's a very complex matter. I think I have reviewed the public comments, and there were significant comments, and many of them disagree with the direction. But I think there's also some misunderstanding about what the difference is between a zoning bylaw and a community planning permit system. And I'm going to try and address this very succinctly in my presentation, but I imagine that members of the public and members of council will have some more specifics that they've honed in on as issues that they'd like to address or get further clarity on, and I'll do my best to address those as well. So if I could have the next slide. So I wanted to get ground the presentation in what we were aiming to achieve. This is a project that was funded by the Housing Accelerator Fund, the federal government grant, with the intent to increase housing supply and variety and improve housing affordability in Saugeen Shores. So that was the overall arching goal. And we were going to do this in 2 ways. We were going to identify areas within the town that are suitable for intensification and higher density forms of housing. And then we're going to implement a community planning permit system in those areas to better guide development and streamline the development process. Next slide, please. We've been at this for a year, 4 main phases. First phase, background, getting the information together, doing on-the-ground site visits, etc. Phase 2 was really about that where, so the nodes and corridor, where is intensification appropriate and therefore a good candidate for this new approach. Phase 3 was the drafting of the general approach to the bylaw and the actual drafting of it. And of course, now we're in the statutory phase with the public open house that happened several weeks ago and the public statutory meeting this evening. Next slide, please. So next slide. Like to focus on that first sort of question, where, and selecting the areas of focus. So we were thinking about where are areas that are appropriate for intensification. Hurdle planning did this phase of the work. They looked at the official plan policies. They looked at the parcel fabric, existing built form, and they identified 2 areas that they thought were good candidates. One was the core commercial area. It's already identified in the official plan as an area of intensification. And we thought that the zoning bylaw didn't necessarily communicate the kind of development that was desired in that area, and that the CPP bylaw could do that better. The highway commercial designation was also identified as an area that probably has greater potential in terms of the amount of units that could be created. It's a larger area. The parcel sizes are larger, more consolidated. But in conversations with staff, we felt that there wasn't a perfect match between what the OP said, which is that this area is primarily intended to be a location for commercial uses that don't fit in the downtowns. There is some scope for residential uses within the designation, but it's not a full vision of a mixed-use area. And so we felt that that kind of broader change to the official plan would be needed in order to make this a candidate for the CPP bylaw. And so we've sort of bookmarked it as a future opportunity, but decided on advancing with the core commercial designation. So if I could have the next slide, just very quickly show you what those areas are. It aligns perfectly with the core commercial designation as in the official plan. And so in Port Elgin, it's a strip along with Goddard Street as its spine. Next slide. And in Southampton, it is more of a different shape because it aligns with High Street and Albert Street as the spines of the area. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk about comparing the CPPS and the zoning bylaw.
So we are passing over 5 minutes there.
Yeah, okay, so I can stop now and just open the floor to questions, or?
I'm sure members of council, when it comes time for them to ask questions, we'll have some questions for you. So we'll just leave it till then. We all have received the presentation, so they'll have an opportunity to ask questions of you. All right?
Okay.
Thank you. So if there are no more presentations from the agent or their applicant, then we'll move on to hearing from members of the public. I have 10 individuals here on my list. So what I'll do is start with those 10, and I'll go through that list. And once I'm through that list, then we'll open the floor. If there's anybody else after that who wishes to speak at that time, we'll hear from them as well. Yes, Councillor Myatt.
I wonder if I might be able to make a procedural bylaw slight amendment that we might put another 5 minutes onto the presentation from the presenter, because I think he was getting into a really niche point that I think is worthwhile. So I'd like to make a motion that we grant another 5 minutes so he can finish the presentation.
Okay, it's moved by the councillor to extend the presentation by 5 minutes, seconded by Councillor Halpin. All in favor of that? Opposed? That's carried. All right, so you can come up and we'll give you 5 more minutes and you can.
Okay, if I could get the presentation back up. I would...
Yep, carry on.
Okay, so the point I'm trying to make here is that the CPP, the Community Planning Permit Bylaw, and the zoning bylaw and site plan control bylaw, they sort of occupy a similar space, but they occupy it within a broader planning framework. You have the Planning Act, which is legislation, which gives the municipality the planning powers. There's policy, and then the regulation is where the rubber sort of hits the road. So what does that policy mean at a specific level? And so what we're doing with the CPP bylaw is in the areas that are within the community planning permit area, the zoning bylaw and the site plan control bylaw do not exist, and they're replaced with the CPP bylaw. Next slide, please. So in that way, next slide as well. And so they're basically different ways of implementing the same thing. This is the objectives, so the core commercial designation as listed in the official plan. You have economic focus, character, identity, vitality, intensification is listed there as well. So both bylaws are trying to implement this agenda. Next slide. And so just very quickly, and this is for your reference, this is the current zoning bylaw. It is dominated by the commercial core designation. Next slide. And this is the new CPP precincts, which divides the area into, in pink, a Port Elgin Main Street precinct, with marked as T, with the beige, a transition precinct. And then you have an open space precinct and an institutional precinct as well. Next slide, please. In Southampton, this is the current zoning bylaw, a mix of commercial core and residential precincts as well as institutional. Next slide. You'll see that the institutional remains the same, that there's a new precinct called Southampton Main Street Precinct in pink, and again, the transition precinct in beige. Next slide, please. The main difference between a zoning bylaw and a CPP bylaw is that whereas the zoning bylaw is a single regulation, and it is sort of changed from the outside through a zoning bylaw amendment or a minor variance. In the CPP case, you have those variations described within the bylaw. And so you have a base regulation, you have a class 2 variation, which is more or less equivalent to a minor variance, and a class 3 variation, which is more or less equivalent to a zoning bylaw amendment. If I could have the next slide, please. This is a little bit difficult to read, but it's just a comparison between this is taking the Southampton Main Street precinct as an example, the new precinct regulations and the old CC2 zone, and the difference between them. Based on a conversation with the public in March, we reduced heights throughout the CPP area to align with the existing zoning bylaw. And so you'll see some remaining variances or differences in terrain coverage, transparency, but I would say they closely track one another, with some differences in other precincts related to rear yard setback. Next slide, please. So this is another important point with the CPP classes, is that the council in the passing of the bylaw also sets forward an approach to each class of permit. So in terms of approval authority and in terms of public notice. And so I would posit that the differences are not that as big as they initially seem in terms of the designation, the delegation of approval authority and the public notice. So you have class 1, which is it's an as of right application. It needs site plan control. Currently, in the zoning-based system, that is already delegated to staff, and there is no public notice. In class 3, which is more or less equivalent to the zoning bylaw amendment, that currently goes before council, there is public notice, and the council makes that decision. So the difference really is in the class 2, which is equivalent to minor variances, and that, whereas a minor variance would go to the committee of adjustment, there would be notice, and there would be a public opportunity to speak at a meeting. In the CPP case, as we've presented it, that's a delegated decision, and there's no public notice. Now, that could be changed. Council can decide what it wants to delegate and how much public notice it wants. And so, but the idea here is because we've defined what a minor variance is more precisely than a zoning bylaw system, and because there has been public input at the beginning, then therefore, is there a need to consult the public again on the variance that we decided when the bylaw was passed? So that's the rationale. But that seems to be something that is upsetting people.
So we have passed over 5 minutes again. So thank you very much. And if there's further comments from council, they will raise them with you at the question point. All right. So as I said before, I have 10 members of the public here who are on my list, and we'll go through them first. Up first then is Jill Taylor, and Ms. Taylor is joining us virtually. So Ms. Taylor, whenever you're ready, you have 5 minutes, ma'am.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this public process. My letter to Council is included in your package. My name is Jill Taylor. I'm a seasonal resident and for decades have been a homeowner in Saugeen Shores in the former town of Southampton. I'm an architect and heritage conservation professional and have served as a former chair of the Conservation Review Board of Ontario and former chair of the Canadian Association of Heritage Professionals. I do not support the draft CPPS and official plan amendment because it is a rushed and vague piece of work that does not identify the unique characteristics of the town of Saugeen Shores or the former town of Southampton where I reside. I wish to address a few points from my letter. The CPPS is a planning tool that is in the early stage of development in the province. What has been prepared for you is a generic off-the-shelf plan that does not suit the unique nature of town. It is not a perfect match for our core commercial areas. There are no design standards that accompany the plan. Therefore, if the CPPS is adopted, there will be no ability for staff or council to measure the acceptability or lack of conformance in the decision-making process. Decisions will be arbitrary. Whereas CPPS has been prepared in other municipalities, some success has been achieved when such plans are written with enforceable community and council-approved standards and guidelines for development that recognize the unique nature of the zones that have been mapped and that enforce the long-term planning goals for sustainable growth and evolution of culture, social, urban design, and environment through a long trajectory. If a revised CPPS should evolve out of this work, we should take cues from those municipalities who have explored or implemented the CPPS. Prepare standard criteria, standards and guidelines that are approved by the public and council, so there are benchmarks for staff recommendations. Make sure that the standards are enforceable in the face of development applications. Be very explicit in the description of the place that is being planned so that the places you are trying to protect are clearly defined with strong, concise language. Prepare specific standards and criteria for assessment that protect vulnerable areas, including protection for designated as well as undesignated properties of heritage value that contribute to the cultural heritage of the area. We are at the cusp of immense risk to our built and natural heritage character due to changes in provincial heritage legislation. This new policy, accompanied by the erosion of our official plan, would further endanger the nature of our two former historic towns. Protect our tree canopy, street trees, and landscapes. Identify protected views and vistas and the effect of development on adjacent heritage properties. Be reminded that tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars have been spent in the past preparing studies that seek to define our identity and character with standards and guidelines that support the distinct characteristics of economy, natural and cultural heritage of Southampton and Port Elgin. These documents exist and are tangible measures of the pursuit of the planning vision, policy, draft guidelines, and recommendations about how to responsibly proceed with planning of our common future. There is nothing achieved by shelving them in order to proceed with risk-laden, oversimplified planning policy in the draft CPPS and OPP amendment. Refine and update those plans in light of all the wonderful commentary that you have in front of you and from our citizens. When you are proposing boundaries for development standards, prepare ones that are clear and rational rather than arbitrary and difficult to understand as the ones that are proposed in the plan. Do not necessarily proceed with the town main streets first. This is not the place to make mistakes, and the decision on the boundaries here was admittedly rushed to start the process with the consultant and meet deadlines. This rushed decision has resulted in flawed boundaries for the two municipal CPPS areas. Reject the exclusionary nature of the draft as it exists. The outpouring of public input into the review of the draft, preceded by an outpouring of commentary at 2 public meetings, is an indicator of the exceptional value of the public participating in our town planning. Excluding the public and reducing timelines and pressure on staff has resulted in and been proven in our jurisdiction and in others across the province to embolden developers who are not connected to the community or its welfare. Reject the concept of no third-party appeal. Examine the risks associated with a development application on fast track with an increased number of applications being taken to the planning department, who are forced to provide a decision in 45 days. In closing, Southampton is distinct. The former towns are very distinct from one another, and the overall averaging of policies applying to core areas does not follow any of the guidance of town-sponsored and commissioned reports of the past 2 decades. Consultant findings confirm that the towns and their environments are separate and unique.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Okay, so now we'll move on to our second speaker, who is Tammy LaRue. Ms. LaRue, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours and you have 5 minutes, ma'am. Just move the mic down there for you. There you go.
Mayor Charbonneau and members of council, good evening. My name is Tammy LaRue and I am a full-time resident of Southampton. And thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Before I begin, I would like to leave with council a copy of a report entitled Executive Summary and Preliminary Findings, Evidence-Based Analysis of Written Public Submissions. I did provide it electronically, so I can leave a copy, hard copy with you as well. I will refer to it briefly during my presentation. Oh, thank you. Like many others, I attended the town's virtual public meeting on March the 31st and the public open house on June 24th to better understand the proposed community planning permit system. I attended to listen and to learn. However, after reviewing the proposal and speaking with members of our community, I became increasingly concerned that this planning framework was moving forward before several important questions had been fully addressed. As a result, I joined a group of concerned citizens, and together we informed the community about the proposed CPPS and encouraged anyone with an opinion to submit comments directly to Bruce County planning staff and council before the July 3rd deadline. Through community conversations, local events, and social media, what surprised us was not that people had concerns, it was how consistent those concerns were. When the agenda for tonight's meeting was released, members of our group reviewed the written submissions contained within the council agenda package and completed a thematic analysis to identify the reoccurring issues emerging from the correspondence. To assist council, we organized that information into the report I have provided this evening. Recognizing that I have only a few minutes, I won't attempt to summarize the entire report. Instead, I'd like to highlight a few of its principal findings. The report summarizes 161 substantive written submissions, representing 191 signatory instances. Each submission was cataloged, summarized, and coded using a consistent 10-theme analytical framework. Although additional verification is continuing, we do not expect it to materially change the reoccurring themes identified in the report. The report does not evaluate the merits of individual submissions. Its purpose is to simply identify the reoccurring themes that those who submitted written comments chose to place before council. The analysis identified 10 reoccurring themes, with the strongest relating to the planning framework itself, community character, heritage conservation, environmental stewardship, infrastructure, housing, public participation, and long-term community vision. Perhaps the most significant finding was the consistency with which participants described the qualities they value most about Saugeen Shores. Across the correspondence, reoccurring references were made to community character, heritage, the natural environment, the waterfront, and established neighborhoods as qualities participants valued and wished to preserve. On July the 6th, during an interview with CTV News London, Mayor Charbonneau, you stated that council was listening to the public and would ultimately follow what the public wants to see you do. And I appreciate those comments. As community members, we undertook this review because we believe council would benefit from an organized summary of the written submissions. Today, we respectfully ask council to undertake the same level of due diligence before making a final decision. Specifically, we ask that council defer final approval of the community planning permit system and direct staff to review established best practices from Ontario municipalities that have successfully balanced growth with community character, and to report back to council on how those practices could be incorporated into the final CPPS. The decision before you tonight will influence Saugeen Shores for generations. We respectfully ask that these decisions be made only after the voices of those who submitted written comments have been carefully heard, thoughtfully considered, and meaningfully reflected in the final community planning permit system. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LaRue. So next speaker is Brian Putnam. Mr. Putnam, whenever you're ready, sir, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors, senior staff, everyone that took the time to come out tonight, and those watching or will be watching on YouTube. Boy, you sure got our attention, didn't you? My name is Brian Putnam, and I'm here tonight to share my thoughts about the steady decline of our town through mass construction of housing developments and a proposal referred to as the community planning permit system, or more commonly referred to by just about everyone in this town, young and old, as the dreaded CPPS. For those that are not aware, the CPPS is one of 8 initiatives that has been funded through the CMHC's $3.2 million Housing Accelerator Fund, awarded to the town in 2024. Aside from the CPPS, the grant is intended to spur on a number of activities designed to fast-track development, convert surplus and underutilized land for housing, and give the town the authority in making decisions to pre-approve wastewater and stormwater alterations submitted by developers. The additional residential unit, or ARU toolkits, also paid by the half, are an excellent idea and provide the schematics for the creation of standardized modular housing. The fund has also encouraged the partnership with nonprofit, long-term affordable housing organizations, such as Habitat for Humanity, which will be constructing 5 of the 28 housing units announced by the town recently. As you know, the CPPS is not new. It was formerly referred to as the Development Permit System, or DPS. It was renamed to encourage municipal councils and the public to adopt the streamlined approach, and to do so in what appears on the surface to be community-based. As you know, the draft CPPS prepared for Saugeen Shores actually removes public participation in the majority of development applications that will be received by the town and the county. I reached out and spoke to directors and managers of planning and development departments in several municipalities that have adopted some form of a CPPS. Some of these planners approached the CPPS cautiously, recognizing that embarking on a CPP bylaw could significantly alter their community and cause serious public backlash. When the contract was awarded to the planning consultants to develop the draft CPPS, which is before you tonight, they were not provided with direction by the town. Were they? Were they not provided with direction by the town at the outset, or were they just left to develop a made in Toronto plan? Did you not know that the residents, permanent and seasonal, are extremely passionate about their main streets, their local character, and the collective charm of Port Elgin, Southampton, and Saugeen Township? Perhaps after all these years, you still don't understand what your primary stakeholders, the taxpayers, not developers, want or need in the leadership of this town. Adopting a CPPS is not appropriate for Saugeen Shores unless it focuses on underutilized commercial or industrial properties. The definition of brownfield sites is fairly relaxed. And the administration of these vacant and derelict sites away from the downtown core could reasonably be handled by planning staff. There are many such potential brownfield sites in Saugeen Shores. The town and the county just needs to map them, a task that is now 14 years overdue. The vast majority of the 444 municipalities in Ontario have chosen to turn their back on this fast-track system. The primary reason? Because the system essentially takes away council's authority to make decisions on development affecting their local neighborhoods. As I mentioned at the open house on June 24th, the CPPS initiative should be an election issue, full stop. Each and every one of you up there needs to come clean and tell the taxpayers of this town whether you are pro-development at the cost of culture, character, and autonomy, or are you willing to put this aside and continue to adopt smart planning practices that accent our current infrastructure, optimize our opportunities, and maintain local governance over one of the few valuable resources you have left to administer, the land on which we stand? Don't let the CPP bylaw be your legacy. Thank you very much.
Yep. All right, our next speaker is Sheila Latham. Miss Latham, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours, ma'am. You have 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Sheila Latham, and I live in Southampton. We appreciate Mayor Charbonneau saying that council will do what the community wants. The community has clearly been engaged in sharing views on this issue. In addition to the valid concerns and expert advice expressed in letters, on social media, and at open houses, we have observed overwhelmingly repeated images and emotions. The images express feelings of violation, that there was no defensible reason for targeting the historic areas of our downtown, no reason for pursuing a proposal that would turn a historic town into a bedroom suburb. The feelings revealed distrust, loss of faith, a sense of frustration, of betrayal and anger. The general feeling is one of disbelief. Why would anyone want to treat our community as any town, of strip malls and sixplexes, with little attention to the historic identity that makes Saugeen Shores special? Why not incorporate detailed design guidelines that will protect the heritage and small town charm loved by residents and tourists alike? Some letters direct their distrust, frustration, and anger to the consultants who have submitted this generic anytown proposal. Others direct these feelings towards the mayor and town council, asking for the CPPS proposal to be an election issue. Far from being any town, Saugeen Shores has proven itself to be distinctive and resilient. We wonder how many of you watch the popular CBC TV series Still Standing, hosted by Johnny Harris, who plays Constable Crabtree on Murdoch Mysteries. In Still Standing, the host visits small towns surviving after losing the industry that was their chief employer. Southampton has lost both its fishing industry and furniture industry. Today, our downtown businesses depend on our tourism industry based on historic charm and character. The streets and cottage lanes have preserved homes once owned by lake boat captains, fishermen, and furniture carpenters. Tourists walk along my street reading heritage plaques, sometimes walking right up to my doorstep. If you diminish our historic character, we will be reduced to a beach community selling bikinis and flotation noodles. Under the CPPS, without protection for heritage, this is bound to happen. The Southampton BIA has expressed in its letter similar concerns. The proposed official plan amendment weakens the official plan, which needs a definition of heritage character for evaluating what is compatible. And the proposed CPPS bylaw is a mere shell of a plan, unfinished and incomplete without design guidelines. The town of Saugeen Shores deserves better than this. We were encouraged to see Saugeen Shores take a laudable step last year when it adopted the Saugeen Shores Cultural Heritage Master Plan. prepared by 2 consulting firms with input from the community. They recommended a range of tools for protecting our built heritage. One tool was the Heritage Conservation District for a specific area of streets. A second tool was the secondary plan with specific regulations within the larger official plan. A third tool recommended defining neighborhood character areas to be included in the official plan. To conclude, before continuing to pursue the CPPS, the town of Saugeen Shores needs to study the excellent recommendations of the Cultural Heritage Master Plan in the context of the community coming together to request the town's support for the preservation of the heritage, character, and small town charm that defines the identity of Saugeen Shores. This is what our community wants. Thank you.
Thanks, Latham. So our next speaker is Virginia Torillis. Ms. Torillis, whenever you're ready, ma'am. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Virginia Torillis and Ed Torillis. We've come here primarily to speak on the proposed parking recommendations stated in the current CPPS draft. I have reviewed several towns, including Lake of Bays, Gananoque, Huntsville, as comparators. The ideal parking design would be a stall size of 3 to 6 meters, which is 10 feet by 19.7 feet, a standard accepted by Lake of Bays. Saugeen Shores is choosing a parking stall smaller by a foot in both width and length, 2.75 by 5.5 meters. Accessibility stall measurements used by most towns is 4.5 by 6 meters. Saugeen Shores has chosen 4.25 by 5.5, slightly better, but still smaller. But the greatest change and impact will be felt in the required number of stalls. The ideal is 2 resident parking spaces per unit. CPPS proposes 1 space per unit for 8 units in Saugeen Shores. Lake of Bays has 2 spaces per 8 units, 16 total. Huntsville has 1.25 to 1.5 per 8 units, 10 to 12 total. Visitor parking is also impacted. The ideal is 1 visitor parking space per 2 dwellings. CPPS proposes 1 visitor space per 8 units. Another reduced proposal is for mixed-use buildings, also reduces parking spaces, suggesting 1 space for 5 resident units. This suggests that the expectation is that 1 resident unit will either have no parking space or an allowance for only 1 vehicle. So to summarize, parking comparison for an 8-unit building, including visitor and accessibility, the totals are Lake of Bays, 20 spaces, Southampton currently, and Gananoque, 12 to 16 spaces, not the 8 being proposed. Huntsville urban area, approximately 10. Especially if we're in a cottage country municipality, the design should be 16 spaces and 2 to 4 visitor spaces, which is more acceptable for a rural tourist area, where households do have 2 vehicles mostly. And remember, majority of winter traveling cars in this area are large trucks. What I did not see in the defined CPPS is parking for commercial vehicles. Lake of Bays requires 1 commercial space per dwelling unit. This may be for a resident using a company vehicle as their own, or for times for deliveries of commercial help is hired by residents. Also not defined in the CPPS is surface materials for parking spaces. We should promote porous paving or other semi-permeable options to allow for water absorption, as green space has also been significantly reduced per sites. Also regarding parking space, snow removal areas could and will be challenged. Regarding the encouragement to walk or use a bike if you can't have a car. This is doable for 15 to 25% in small towns, but 70 to 80% of trips are driving trips. In Southampton, we do ride our bikes a little more in the spring and summer months, but this relies on several main factors. Not everyone can walk or bike 2 to 3 kilometer radius to get their groceries. The issue is weather and climate. With snow, ice, wind temperatures beside Lake Huron, When temperatures fall below 15 degrees, ridership drops off sharply. When it goes below 5 degrees, you don't walk anymore. That declines. Regular strong Lake Huron wind gusts push people off their bikes and into their cars. So a couple of other quick tips. Pedestrians are 284 more times to be likely killed or injured rather than in a vehicle occupants. Danger zones are intersections with vehicles turning right or left. And I had 3 instances on High and Albert Street where I had to jump back. And other light trucks and SUVs are a lot quieter now, and they do have blind spots causing 25% of pedestrian deaths. So what are the alternate modes of transportation? Bus, taxi. I did see a white one in PE on Saturday. Uber, Subway, rent-to-electric scooters, DoorDash, none of which are accessible options in Saugeen Shores. Unless one of the people here, a couple of years ago, they did hire a taxi service to take them to Owen Sound, which cost $130. So please review, reconsider, redesign, or discard some of the CPPS proposed options. And aside from trying to protect parking for our new residents in town, I do have a comment, most concerning because we live in the transition zone, precinct area of Southampton. So what are the actual plans for this area? And when will we be discussed with taxpaying, when will this be discussed with the taxpaying owners or residents before the developers take control and intensify? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so our next speaker is Betsy Puthon. Ms. Puthon, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours, ma'am, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and community. My name is Betsy Puthon, and I'll speak to the proposed CPPS. Let me get right to it. CPPS is not the right planning tool for Saugeen Shores. This community is a special place. We are home to the oldest port on this coast, and our community reflects generations of history, character, and pride. These deep roots are part of what makes Port Elgin, Southampton, and the township so sought after. The proposed CPPS has struck a chord. Residents have spoken up and have taken the time to engage because they care deeply about the future of this community. We recognize that growth is coming and we welcome thoughtful development. But growth must come with appropriate safeguards. The draft CPPS does not provide those safeguards. It would not recognize our unique community attributes. It would not strengthen heritage protection. It would not preserve the character of our streetscapes or greenscapes. It would not address affordable housing, and it is disingenuous to attach that as an outcome of adopting CPPS. What it would do is reduce public engagement, limit council's role in planning decisions, and ignore the valuable input of staff and advisory committees. It would take away the voice of the very community that is shown up here tonight. We have already demonstrated that there are better approaches. The Cottage Streets Design Guidelines are an example of meaningful community engagement leading to planning outcomes that preserve and protect while accommodating change. Across Ontario, some communities have become destinations because they have embraced and protected their heritage, their streetscapes, and their distinct identities. Their character is not an accident, it is the result of deliberate choices. Of 444 Ontario municipalities, about 10 have adopted a CPPS, less than 1%, which means 99% have not adopted it. That alone should give us pause. Council members, you have the opportunity and responsibility to be champions of Saugeen Shores. I ask you to decline the proposed CPPS and instead put in place a long overdue planning policy that preserves our heritage, protects our character, encourages meaningful public participation, ensures that growth enhances, not diminishes, the special place we call home, and leaves to future generations a community they will be proud to inherit. If adopted, the damage it does will be the Council's legacy. CPPS must be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lujan. So our next speaker is Patricia Corrigan Frank. Ms. Frank, whenever you're ready, ma'am, you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Patricia Corrigan Frank, and I'm a resident of Port Elgin, and more importantly, of Saugeen Shores. I'm here tonight to speak on Agenda Item 6.2, the Community Planning Permit Bylaw and Official Plan Amendment. I am requesting that Council defer final approval of the CPPS. I believe that further study of similar municipalities that have adopted this system is needed. Let's see how they are handling the incorporation of this process and perhaps learn from them. My understanding is that this could possibly be approved in August, and I just don't understand the rush. At the very least, I believe that this decision should be deferred until after the October 26th election. Major irreversible decisions made just prior to an election are unwise. Case in point, 4 years ago on October 11th, 6 days before voting was to begin in the 2022 elections, Council declared a large portion of the Port Elgin Main Beach as surplus to the town. This was passed to facilitate a 50-year lease on a commercial development. As a result of that decision, the town and we, the taxpayers, are currently in the middle of a court case to cancel that lease, which comes with huge legal costs for all of us. What have we been left with? A blighted waterfront and a messy vacant construction site surrounded by unsightly fencing. Please don't make the same mistake again. As you all face the end of this term of council, wouldn't it be best to defer this decision until after the election to allow the new council to decide with the full authority of the electorate? We all want to see streamlined development, housing that is more affordable, and vibrant downtowns with mixed-use spaces. These are our shared goals. But the CPPS is a powerful tool and must be implemented carefully, if at all. Of the 444 municipalities in Ontario, fewer than 15 have adopted a CPP or development permit bylaw. Some have adopted a pilot first approach because they knew a misstep would affect their communities forever. Others had to significantly modify their original bylaw that they passed after seeing flaws in the implementation. And here is the most troubling part for me of the draft proposal. From the information that I have read, the CPPS appears to remove public participation from the majority of development applications in our downtown areas. That is not community-based planning. It is closing the door on the very people who will have to live with these decisions for generations. It will fundamentally change how our downtowns are shaped, who gets to build, what gets built, and who gets a say. Make no mistake, the character of our unique communities is at stake. Let's not handcuff our council by passing this bylaw prior to the election. Let's do this wisely, let's do it together, and let's do it after the people have spoken. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Corwin T. Cambray. Mr. Cambray, whenever you're ready, sir, the floor is yours. Mr. Cambray, oh, there you come. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm here representing the Southampton Residents Association, and the Residents Association have submitted comments to the town for the consideration. And we've heard quite well about the permit system, but I just wish to make a few strong points about the official plan. The official plan is the most significant municipal planning document that the town has. And the proposed amendments, 7 of them, would affect the vibrant, diverse, and historic significant economic active community of downtown Southampton in particular. And I wish to point out one particular change, one addition that is to my mind, as a professional planner, Mr. Mayor, retired, I gray hair, no professional planner would agree to this. And the change is that a new section be added that enables the proposed community planning permit bylaw to prevail over the official plan. The official plan, the most important municipal document, and a technical document is going to prevail over the official plan. That professionally should never be allowed. I wish to thank the mayor and the town for this opportunity to reiterate some of these comments from the Southampton Residents Association. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cranberry. All right, our next speaker is Harry Mazmanian. Mr. Mazmanian, whenever you're ready, sir, floor is yours. Mr. Mazmanian? Yeah, whenever you're ready, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Mayor and council members, I have to say, I'm impressed by some of the speakers here tonight who have spoke very passionately about this system, and I hope everybody's listening. In addition to my letter dated 3rd of July 2026, I've gathered more information, speaking with fellows like this gentleman here, Brian Putnam, who are retired planners, and they live in Saugeen Shores. I cannot see any benefit to the residents of our community in general with this CPPS. I can only determine that the CPPS benefits developers and special interest groups at an accelerated rate. Now, there is an alternative to the CPPS, to which I recommend the following to preserve our democratic ideals. Leave the official plan as is, as mentioned by this gentleman here. Don't make those changes you're recommending, but with the following additions. I recommend the town of Saugeen Shores develop a Southampton secondary plan in cooperation with Bruce County Planning and Development Department and a Citizens Advisory Committee to identify, preserve, and protect Southampton's heritage. Number 2, I also recommend that the town of Saugeen Shores develop a Port Elgin secondary plan in cooperation with the Bruce County Planning and Development Department and a Citizens Advisory Committee to identify, preserve, and protect Port Elgin's heritage. Now, several municipalities already have this type of a plan, and Bayfield is one of them, and they just live down the road, and they adopted that in 2015. And fourthly, abandon the CPPS. And in closing, with all due respect, and I mean this from my heart, I believe all council members, except for a comment from one council member on the 10th of October 2023, all respect the fact that in a democratic country, genuine public consultation that is effective doesn't end the day after election day. If you truly believe this, abandon the CPPS to demonstrate your collective democratic approach to growth in Saugeen Shores. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mazmanian. So our next speaker is Micheline Mann. Ms. Mann, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours, and you have 5 minutes, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Micheline Mann, and I live full-time in Southampton. I'd like to speak about something almost as important as the community planning permit system itself, and something this entire process has brought to the forefront: trust. There is a growing divide between Town Hall and the people it serves. Whether unintentional or otherwise, the result is the same. Residents no longer feel informed, included, or heard. Simple questions should not require detective work. We are told that the CPPS will help solve the housing crisis. Well, how? What are the numbers? How many affordable homes will it actually create? How many rental units? In what timeline? What percentage reduction in housing prices can we expect to see? How will success be measured? In place of numbers and data, we are told that streamlining approvals should encourage more housing, which may improve affordability. Perhaps, but this outcome is unproven and may take as long as 20 years. This is not a measurable plan, it is an assumption. Furthermore, what does affordable or below market mean? 5, 10, 25% below market? With the average local home selling for over $700,000, even 25% below market remains out of reach for many seniors, young families, healthcare workers, PSWs, students, and people living on fixed incomes. However, if the purpose of the CPPS is merely to increase development, then tell us the targets. How many applications are expected each year? How many approvals? What outcomes will determine whether this policy has succeeded or failed? Those are the measurements and fulsome communication that build public confidence. And by the way, who asked for all this development? Almost nobody in this room, as far as I can tell. Though communication and trust are two reasons many people are skeptical of this proposed CPPS, fear of unchecked development is another. It doesn't help that the consultant, Andrew Davidge himself, referenced a past stakeholder meeting where only one stakeholder attended, developers. Developers are our only stakeholders? What happened to the BIA, business owners, employers, heritage preservation societies, healthcare providers, farmers, fair housing agencies, homeowner, cottage, and neighborhood associations? Was everyone busy that day, or was communication poor? Now we're being asked to support a streamlined development approval system that would shift more decisions away from council and onto the shoulders of an already overwhelmed staff. And yet we all know that developments do not always unfold as promised. The unfinished Powerlink building reminds us that projects can stall, ownership can change, and circumstances can shift. These realities make vigilant oversight essential, as we cannot rely on developers' promises alone. The same applies to promises of affordable housing, landscaping, and tree planting commitments. I have much more to say about how trees are selected, planted, and supported, but I will leave that for another time. And every other public benefit negotiated with developers. A promise only has value if it can be measured, monitored, and enforced. If communication is falling short, fix it. Publish meaningful data and make information easier to find. Measure results publicly. And just as importantly, listen to your educated, informed, experienced, and deeply concerned public. When we have a culture of governance that doesn't include these things, we have the divide in which we currently find ourselves today. When public consultation appears to produce very little change, people naturally begin to wonder whether they're truly being heard. Residents do not want to spend time scrutinizing council. We would rather spend our time working with and in support of you. But if council asks us to trust the value of a CPPS while dismissing the concerns of so many residents, there should be no surprise when that trust is withheld. I will conclude by saying this draft is premature. It does not reflect what this community wants and needs, and as far as we can tell, it doesn't even do what you're telling us it will do. The only group that appears happy with this draft are developers. We know developers have a responsibility to their investors. However, council has a responsibility to the electorate and to the long-term character and well-being of Saugeen Shores. Do not pass this draft. Take the time to get it right, because it will shape Saugeen Shores for generations. And in the end, it should be something of which we can all be proud. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so that is the end of the list that I have in front of me. Are there other folks in the room who wish to speak to this matter? Yes, sir. Just make your way up and make sure to give us your name for the record. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, and through you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Peter Stanley. I live here in Saugeen Shores with my family, and I work with Bruce Power as a lead risk specialist on the major component replacement project. My job is to look at big projects and ask what could go wrong if we ignore the details. Tonight, I want to ask that about the community planning permit systems being proposed for our town. A CPPS replaces our zoning bylaws with streamlined permit. Faster approvals, fewer steps, and no public input or appeal on individual applications. We would be trading our seat at the table for developers' convenience. And I want you to think about what we get from developers today before we hand them over a faster track. Walk through a new subdivision and try to find a playground. There is no requirement for one. Families move in, kids arrive, and there is nowhere to play within walking distance. Look at where the sidewalks go. Developers put their effort into higher value side of the street, leaving the sidewalk undeveloped, so families have to walk on roads. This is very apparent on Ivings and many other streets around there, where I saw a small family yesterday with 4 children on the road where people speed regularly, ignoring stop signs. This is the standard of development we get with full oversight. Now imagine it with less. Under the system, the rules are written once. If those rules are missed, if the rules are missed something, and today's rules clearly miss playgrounds and sidewalks, then every project after that gets approved with the same flaw baked in. No public meeting to catch it. That's the development at all cost. We all know growth pressure is on this town, but housing and employers' workforce is not the responsibility of residents. If a major employer needs homes for its people, that effort should be spearheaded by the employer, not carried by the community through weaker planning rules. Fix the standards first, require playgrounds, require complete streets. I'm asking council to keep residents at the table, because under the system, the only voice we have is the one we have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further members of the public here who wish to speak? Yes, ma'am. Come on up. Make sure to give us your name for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. Mayor Charbonneau and members of council, my name is Natalina Bombino Campanolo. I am a Southampton property owner and a small business owner, and my career is built entirely around tourism. I support reasonable growth, I support responsible growth and the need for housing. However, I am deeply concerned about the proposed community planning permit system and its application to Southampton and Port Elgin's historic cores. Through my work, I've escorted hundreds of guests through European historic centers. In successful destinations, the historic heart of a community is recognized as an irreplaceable economic asset. They protect it with strict development guidelines while directing denser growth to appropriate corridors outside the core. The CPPS, as proposed, loosens the very guidelines that protect our very important historical centers and bring tourism and support the economy of Saugeen Shores. Southampton's identity, for example, is our greatest economic asset here in Southampton. Visitors do not come here for generic development. They come for an authentic experience driven by our heritage homes, mature streetscapes, walkable downtown, and small town atmosphere. Once this character is lost, your tourism economy goes with it. Please consider the CCPS outside the precious historic centers of Saugeen Shores. And I also will add that I agree this is a very important matter to be taken up after the election, because whatever is decided will be a reflection of those of you that stand before us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Is there anybody else in the room who hasn't spoken yet who wishes to address council on this matter? I think there's folks in the other room too, so I guess hopefully they can hear me down the hall as well. So if there's anybody down there too who wishes to speak to council on this matter, make your way down here and you will be recognized. Sir, yes, go ahead. You have 5 minutes, and make sure to give us your name for the record.
Council members, thank you for letting me say a few words. My name is Paul Leader, and I'm a full-time resident in Southampton. My family settled here in the late 1800s, so it's a lot of history in our family when it comes to Southampton. I wanted to make a couple of points. I sent in a letter earlier to meet the July 3rd deadline. And in that letter, I suggested to the town council that you consider taking Southampton and designating it as an historical town. That's been done in Ontario and Newmarket, St. Mary's, a few other areas that I listed in the letter. And there's nothing to stop you from doing that. And I understood, or I understand that in my research that I was doing, that something's going to be happening in January of 2027 that will delay that kind of action from happening. So it's something that maybe the town council should consider before they proceed with anything along that area. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I was a councillor for 4 terms in the town of Flamborough, now part of Hamilton, merged together. I was chairman of their planning committee. I was very instrumental in putting together the official plan for the town of Flamborough. A lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of public meetings went into that to garner the people's input. To hear one of my fellow speakers say that the official plan will now be almost like a footnote really struck a chord with me. And I think that you need to consider what the intent of that was before you shove it aside and bring in a permit system that'll not do what it should be doing. So I just wanted to make those comments and say, look after Southampton. Don't let it get away from us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there other members of the public who wish to speak to council on this matter? Anybody else wish to speak to us at this time? I'll just take a moment, and while I wait in case anybody's coming down from the other room, I'll just ask the clerk if there are any written submissions that were not already discussed in the planning report presentation or oral submissions.
Thank you, Mayor Charbonneau. Through you, since the publication of the agenda, we did receive 10 written submissions. They were circulated to council before this meeting, and I'll provide an overview. So in opposition to the CPPS, we had the ad hoc CPPS Citizen Advisory Committee, the executive summary and preliminary findings as summarized by Tammy LaRue verbally in the public meeting. We had Nancy Harper submitted comments requesting a delay of implementation and stronger protections related to environmental impacts, infrastructure capacity, and community character. Frank Fernandez requested deferral until after the municipal election and additional public engagement and urban design work before adoption. Patricia Corrigan Frank requested deferral of the CPPS, citing concerns about public participation, implementation, and long-term impacts on community character. Subsequent to that, there was additional comments received from Patricia questioning why the CPS is being advanced at this time, noted limited adoption across Ontario municipalities, and recommended observing other municipalities before proceeding. Michelle Unsworth-Foote supports growth in housing, but not the CPPS as currently drafted, asking for stronger protections for heritage, neighborhood character, building designs, natural features, and infrastructure impacts, and urges council not to rush the decision. Joanne Cupic, I may have pronounced that wrong, I apologize, opposed moving forward with the CPPS without greater public input, expressed concerns about preserving Southampton's historic character, downtown charm, shoreline, and tourism appeal, and requested council reconsider or halt the proposed CPPS. Laura Crozet requested council reconsider the CPPS as currently drafted and review concerns before proceeding. Laura Robinson provided comments opposing the CPPS, citing concerns regarding reduced public appeal rights, transparency, council oversight, and affordable housing outcomes. In support for the CPPS, we had Minnie Jocks, who supported the tool to protect heritage and neighborhood character, streamlining approvals and encouraging affordable housing opportunities. And also in support, Herb Schmidt, who supported proceeding with the CPPS, suggested a pilot approach and highlighting potential benefits for housing and planning efficiencies. Thank you.
You. So now that we've gone through that and we've had a few moments, I'll just ask if there's anybody else either here in the room or outside the room who hasn't spoken, who wishes to address council on this matter. Don't see anybody putting up their hands, so we'll now ask members of council if they have questions before we close the public meeting to consider the recommendation. I'll take Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My first question is asking staff, I guess, for a definition of what is an as-of-right application. That's been mentioned several times, and specifically in regard to Class 1 permits.
The planner?
Thank you through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So a class 1 permit, that would be an indication that the proposal meets all the general regulations in the CPP bylaw, as well as those specific regulations for the precinct in which that property is located. So there would be no variation needed from the regulations.
The councillor?
Follow-up. As of right application also applies outside the CPP. So how would that be defined generally in terms of zoning bylaw?
The planner?
Yes, thank you. So as a follow-up, under the current zoning bylaw amendment, if a proposal came in that did comply with the regulations in a particular zone and did not need any minor variance or zoning bylaw amendment in relation to those regulations, they would be eligible to go straight to a building permit process if a building permit was required.
Councillor?
Thank you. So either, I guess, the director or his delegate or their delegate, I wondered if staff could define right now area character that is specifically denoted as an approval criterion in section 1.12C.
The planner?
If I may, through you, Mayor Charbonneau, I may direct that question to the consultant.
Okay, I'll ask the consultant.
So just to add a little bit about character and design guidelines, because many folks alluded to the character as being really important and urban design guidelines as an approach to that. Some CPPS or CPP bylaws have those internal to the CPP bylaw, and others have them external. And so what we have here is our recommendation is that they be external. There is already a set of guidelines today that exist, but we feel that there should be an urban design guidelines that are developed specifically with the intensification character balance in mind. And so that really gets to the point of what character is and area character, because it is existing context, but it's also planned context. And the plan context would be as described in the official plan and through those urban design guidelines to present a clearer vision about how the area should evolve over time.
The councillor?
Thank you. Okay, I have comments later that I don't think that what we have is a sufficient definition of character, but I'm just asking questions.
Have order, please. Let's have order.
I'll refer to that later. Section, maybe Andrew could answer this too. Section 1.12J refers to provincially designated properties or properties adjacent to them. So we have relatively few designated properties within the downtown areas. In Southampton, there are 5, and in Port Elgin, only 1. So how do we apply heritage design standards outside of those limited locations?
The consultant?
Someone mentioned doing a, so to begin with, when you think about the zoning bylaw, we don't necessarily think of the zoning bylaw as being the solution to preserving heritage. We have the Ontario Heritage Act. We can designate under Part 4. We can do heritage conservation districts under Part 5. Those would be avenues for preserving heritage and for preserving heritage of an entire area and establishing a plan in the case of a Part 5 designation, which is a whole area or district that would guide future growth. And so you would have applicants not only having to go through a planning application process, but also having to go through a heritage permitting process in the cases where designation happens. So that can exist happily with the CPP bylaw. It can exist happily with the zoning bylaw system. The guidelines could study and express what design character is in terms of the heritage of the area and define that better, which would be linked into CPP approval criteria through, and just to clarify as well, recently in 2022, Bill 23 passed by the provincial government really reduced the potential for design and urban design to be considered in the site plan approval process. The community planning permit system is sort of a part of the Planning Act that's a little bit forgotten in that similar changes were not made to it. So if you want to create guidelines that have implementability, the CPP bylaw is a better base to do that than a zoning bylaw due to the recent changes in planning legislation.
The counselor.
Thanks. That actually goes right into my next question because I was looking at the 2022 Hertel report, which was referenced in the planning report for today. And it does say exactly what you said, that the CPPS could be used to circumvent some of these planning restrictions that have been handed down by the province, like Bill 23's restriction on or exemption to site plan control for residential developments with under 11 dwelling units. Huntsville has done that. Another way, method of getting around this would be Gananoque and Huntsville, which both require pre-consultation, which is something from Bill 185, maybe? I'm trying to think if I have that right. Yep, Bill 185 from 2024, the province said municipalities can't require pre-consultation anymore. But Huntsville and Gananoque have both required those and do require those. So I guess what I'm asking is, can we add those to our CPPS? And we don't, that's not in the proposed bylaw right now, but can we do that?
The consultant.
So with regards to the site plan exemption for developments of under 10 or under 11 residential units, that is tied into the definition of development under the site plan section of the Planning Act. And so in the regulation that creates the CPP bylaw, there's a different definition of development. So our interpretation of that is that that requirement for or to exempt the site plan for developments of 10 or 11 and under does not apply in the CPP bylaw. We have included an exemption of 4 units and under, and that aligns with the work that the city or the town has done on ARUs. So, but it is less than the 10. And then on the pre-consultation, I would have to take that away and think about it and read the legislation and the regulation carefully. I mean, the way we've phrased it in the current bylaw is that it is recommended. I mean, it just makes for a much less efficient application process if the applicant doesn't start talking to the town and county early. So it's really to their benefit to engage in that process. So I would have to take a look at it a little bit more carefully as to whether it could be made mandatory or not.
Counselor.
Thanks. Our proposed bylaw, CPP bylaw, says strongly encourage, but it doesn't say required. And I just wondered, you know, to me, if you look at Gananoque, they won't even accept a formal application until that pre-consultation is done. So yes, I'd be interested in why those two municipalities are able to do that. Gananoque has a whole section about how it's really important to do that pre-consultation step. And I would think that, that's something we should look at. I appreciate that. One of the sections for the class 3 permit says that the class 3 permit is the one where council gives approval for something. And then it says that, this is section 1224 and 1243. It says that the applicant can come back with a requested modification. And that would be then at staff's discretion to decide if council should look at that requested modification for something they already gave approval for. And to me, I'm troubled by that because that was something that is a class 3 permit. It's supposed to be council. So I just wondered why that was phrased that way.
Zoltan?
So can you clarify the question just again?
Sorry. So section 1224 and 1243 say that in the case of a class 3 permit, approval authority for the modification of provisional approval shall be determined at the discretion of the director or delegate based on the scale of changes to the provisional approval form. And essentially, I guess what I'm wondering is, what does that scale of changes mean? Do we have any definition of what that scale would consist of? Or, and the fact that this is something that people have been told council is going to make this decision, somebody comes back with a modification, and it's not necessarily council anymore.
The consultant?
So just to sort of draw a parallel to the current system, which is the zoning-based system. So it's not so unusual that an applicant would come forward with an application that requires a zoning bylaw amendment. And then that goes through the process, they get their approval, they continue doing more detailed design, and then they realize, oh my gosh, we sort of have to do a tweak here, tweak there, tweak there, and we need some minor variances. So they go back, they go to the committee of adjustment, and they get the approval for the minor variances to the amendment there. It's basically trying to create something similar here where if you need a couple more tweaks, you don't have to go back to the very beginning, and understanding that, or presuming that the director is working in the public interest and wants and would evaluate whether that those small changes are actually something sort of like the straw that breaks the camel's back, and council should review it again, or whether there really are small tweaks that have no major impact on the development, is just to make it more efficient. That's why we included that wording in there.
The counselor?
Yeah, I just wondered if we could have a precise definition of what are we talking about? What are some examples of scale, as opposed to just a general a statement of saying the scale of change. With regard to landscaped, the requirements for landscaped open space may be achieved through a green roof. Is there a limit on the number of green roofs we can have within this area? And will we have a green roof bylaw to accompany this?
The consultant?
So the green roofs are really it's just an option. I believe, if memory serves, it is that option to do it on a roof rather than at grade is only included in the Main Street districts. And what you have in the Main Street district is, in essence, it could be a zero front yard setback. So you're building it straight on the street, on the lot line. And so where's that 15% going? It could go, I guess, in the rear yard. where it's not going to really have much of a public impact at all. At that point, it's really about permeability and in landscaping. And so if it's more efficient, or if the developer prefers to provide that permeability on the roof, then that could be an option. I don't think that is a make or break element of the bylaw. It was something that we just put in there as a possibility. But if people were disturbed by that, I think you could remove it without having much impact on the overall bylaw.
Sorry, my last comment, I'm not opposed to green roofs. I just thought if there's no, I could just envision a whole lot of large trees on the top of Southampton or Port Elgin's. I know City of Toronto has bylaws on green roofs, and I'm sure lots of other places do. I'd just like some assurance that if that's going to be in there, we're going to have some kind of guidelines for how that would work.
Okay. Any further questions? That's it from you, Councillor Grace. All right, then we'll turn to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Grace was very thorough, so I kept flipping because I had some of the same references. I know we're at the question part, and I hope we'll still have time for opinion after you close the public meeting, but page 2 of the report before us reads, and I quote, "A CPPS works by establishing a community vision for development within an identifiable area." That's the quote. And then it goes on to say that the bylaw can include notice and consultation requirements. And Councillor Grace approached consultation from the point of an applicant. I read it as consultation with the area, the neighborhood, that kind of thing. So I appreciate that she also asked about some definitions. I think there's an awful lot of work that could be done to really get at better definitions. The idea of the planned context and area character, that was mentioned. Community character and heritage is mentioned in a number of places, but there's no real defining of that yet. But my questions, and I have quite a list here. I'll just do a couple and then give some other people a chance. I find the language in the draft bylaw difficult in that there's discrepancies between items. So it is a draft. I understand that, but in places it's in compliance, and in other places it says in conformity and compliance. I'm trying to figure out what the differences are. The exemption part was a bit confusing to me as well. There was consistency questions and that kind of thing. And Councillor Grace brought up a number of items, but I was focusing in on some places where there were OLT applications with a timeline, but then there was a place where it appeared as though an OLT application could be made by an applicant even in advance of receiving a decision or a response from the town. But my specific questions in the draft bylaw, and I'm looking at section 5, which is Main Street precincts. So these are the real hardcore downtown areas. So the tables that go along with it, table 5.1, permitted uses non-residential, and then table 5.2 is permitted uses residential. When I look at this chart, one of the challenges that just keeps riding through my mind as I read this is we don't have a definition of character, but we all understand that there are different characters in our two downtowns, and we've reflected that in other documents. It's reflected in our official plan. It's reflected in different guideline documents. It's reflected in different branding exercises we've done. So there are distinctions there that even if we haven't defined them, we all know that they're there. But on table 5.2, the chart, permitted uses residential, the Port Elgin district, Port Elgin main district, when I look down their column, the only place where I see a P for permitted is residential unit, P, and then additional residential unit, P-3, which is additional residential units are permitted in legally non-conforming uses subject to provisions of section 4.2. Only 2 places do I see a P in the Port Elgin one. On the Southampton side, on that column, there's a P in every single item: residential unit, single detached building, semi-detached building, duplex building, triplex building, fourplex building, ARU, street townhouse building, townhouse building, apartment building. Why are we, why is that? That seems to me to be very strange because Port Elgin, to me, if you look at the character, downtown Port Elgin has already been built up. There's density there, all of that. It also is in very close proximity to recreational facilities, you know, Walmart, Giant Tiger. The opportunity for people to survive without a car in many ways is much more real in downtown Port Elgin than it would be in downtown Southampton. So I'm just curious, why are all these other residential types not included on the chart as permitted uses when they are in Southampton? That just seems odd to me. Is there an explanation for that?
So they sort of mean, this sounds going to sound strange, but they sort of mean the same thing. Whereas in the Port Elgin case, it's really about, you can have a residential unit and it doesn't really matter where the form is. But in those instances, you're always going to have a non-residential at the grade level, right? And so your place can look like a 3-story building. It can look like a single story or a single family home, but you have to have a non-residential ground floor, and that's activating that main street. So that's basically that approach. And admittedly, you point out a point which I think it should be more consistent, but the same applies to Southampton. You can have all those different types of residential uses, but you still have to have a non-residential use at grade animating that main street.
The Deputy Mayor?
That's not how I read that at all. So I will look again, but I did not read in this that the only way you get a residential unit in the Main Street precincts is with an attached commercial element, which then I have an opinion about that. I respect all of the people who spoke. One woman spoke very much about parking. The parking situation, we should be addressing that even if we don't get very far with the CPPS, this one parking space per 5 units when there's a commercial aspect attached to it, when that commercial aspect can be tiny, tiny, tiny. It cannot even have to function as a commercial. It can just be showing as commercial. I have a great deal of difficulty with that, but I appreciate the comment. I will look again because it wasn't clear to me. And it makes no sense really still then that the Southampton list has Ps in them all if they're similar in both. They should both be similar then. So it's confusing. I would like to just understand also the use of, no, let me find it here. The public notice part in the bylaw, in the draft bylaw, it talks about public notice has postings, and it also just says on a website. I would presume that you mean the town's website. You're not recommending any other kind of notification to the public, irregardless of whether it's a Class A, Class B, or Class 1, Class 2, or Class 3 application. It's just on the website. And is that just for the Class 3, Class C category, or is it period?
The consultant.
I believe the way it works currently is that notice is given on the county's website, and that's the case. So it's through that mechanism for both minor variances and zoning bylaw amendments. And so what we've recommended, and through discussions with staff in trying to streamline the process, was the Class 3, which is the equivalent in terms of the extent of the ask above the base regulation as a zoning bylaw amendment, that it's sort of processed as it is now. So there would be a mail out, there would be a notice on the site, and it would be up on the website. And I think what we've heard from people this evening is that in terms of the class 2, which currently has public notice and and that they would like to see that reinstated for public transparency purposes, and that could be done. The delegation could also be changed. You could have council considering minor variances or what's equivalent to minor variances, or you could delegate that to the staff, but have a public notice where it's put on the website for people to review and make comment. This can be written as council wishes to delegate and to notify the public. So there's a lot of flexibility there.
The Deputy Mayor?
If the bylaw can include notice and consultation requirements, I'm always a fan of more rather than less. And so I'll reserve those comments for later. Can you explain to me, I wrote down 1.20.4 talks about an appeal at any time. And then somewhere else in the draft bylaw, there's reference to an appeal within a 20-day limit. What's the difference?
Consultant?
So there, in the legislation, there's a number of points when the applicant can appeal something. They can appeal what's included in a complete application. They can say, well, you've asked for this report, but we don't think there's a report. We're taking it to the OLT, and you can just, the OLT can decide. There is a number of points like that where the applicant can appeal to the OLT. The 20-day decision is about, or 20-day appeal period is after the actual decision on the whole application. So if the application is refused, then the applicant has 20 days to appeal.
Deputy Mayor?
And the other one that I'll ask you, 1.20.5, item B, talks about an applicant, when they submit something, there's a comment there about letters can come in from adjacent property owners. Seeing that there, I'm assuming that means positive supportive letters to come in. However, the language there would suggest that letters from adjacent property owners can be sent in. So which one is it?
Consultant?
So I believe in that instance, it's if there's an issue, if the planners have identified a potential issue with a neighbor, that you would have to submit a letter from the neighbor saying that there had been an agreement about how that issue was going to be addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll reserve the rest until others speak.
Further questions from the members, the Vice Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Mayette.
So, Mr. Mayor, I have lots of comments, but we're still in the question period.
That's correct. Questions at this time, please.
You could put me on the list for comments. I like to make some comments off the top, I think. Most of my questions have been answered, and I had a really good half-hour discussion with the town of Huntsville planner today about their CPP, and had a lot of questions answered there too. It was very helpful. I heard one of the comments tonight about the town's official plan is going to be replaced with the community planning permitting system. Did I hear that correctly, or did I not hear it correctly? Because I think the Ontario provincial planning statement just stays the same. Coos County official plan stays the same. Town official plan stays the same. But the zoning bylaw and site plan control would be, combined into the community planning permit system. Correct? Did I hear incorrectly with one of those statements tonight?
We'll ask the planner on that one, the planner.
Thank you, through Mayor Charbonneau. So I believe the reference is with respect to a clause in the amendment. If you could bear with me for a moment, I will just pull that up. So specifically, the proposed amendment indicates that where interpretation is unclear, any specific requirements for an application made under the community planning permit bylaw shall prevail over those of this plan. So it is a policy that would provide an interpretation clarification. It doesn't necessarily override the official plan. It's just where there is a conflict that the CPP bylaw would prevail.
Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thanks for clarifying.
Okay, I'll get Mayette and then Stack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I have two questions. First one is, in as much as the CPPS is it's a forward-looking type of application process that progressive municipalities have taken advantage of, and some of those advantages have been discussed here tonight and maybe disputed even. But it does give some, as you alluded to a few minutes ago, it does give some areas of control around site plan that were recently limited by the provincial government. So in as much as it has advantages, and also the things that constrain development besides the intensive planning process that we have for developers, which is, this is supposed to streamline a little bit. Well, the constraints are also around our infrastructure. If we have to add more sections to our water treatment plant or our sewage treatment plant, or put in, replace aging underground infrastructure or bridges or things like that. And for those things, we often apply for grants. So question to the director then maybe is, if we have a community permitting system in place for Saugeen Shores, and that demonstrates that Saugeen Shores is a progressive community that is looking to advance our development and our intensification goals by the provincial government, when do we go to apply for grants for things like sewage, water bridges, things like that? Do you think that having a CPPS in place would be looked at by the agencies that supply those grants as an advantage and maybe increase our chances of getting a grant?
The director?
Through you, your worship. I can't speak specifically in terms of, from a provincial perspective, in terms of, success or no success. But I think my thoughts are that the CPPS would demonstrate the municipality or the town's commitment to advancing development and affordability. And I think to that end, then the other levels of government would work in collaboration with the town to advance the objectives and the goals that the town is trying to achieve.
The councillor?
That's what I was kind of getting at, is it kind of puts us in the light of communities that are advancing the objectives, the stated objectives of the provincial government and federal government to create more housing. Okay. Second question is, so tonight we're considering in the motion that is on the floor, been seconded and first moved and seconded, is to receive this for information. We are not approving this tonight. Once presumably we will receive this for information. I'm guessing that we will, but what would be a timeline for when this will come back to be actually approved and actually adopted by the town?
Does the planner speak to that?
If I may, through Mayor Charbonneau, I may defer to the Director of Development Services.
The director?
Thanks, Your Worship. So I think based on the comments and the feedback, certainly from a staff's perspective, we've heard a lot of comments tonight. We've received a lot of written comments. So we'll certainly be taking this back and reviewing it and giving it due consideration. I think just given, I don't want to make a commitment on the part of staff in terms of whether or not we would be able to bring it back in August at this point. But certainly if council wishes that, we will certainly endeavor to achieve that going forward.
Councillor?
Thank you for that. I guess the converse of that would be if council wishes to delay it until, say, November or December, we could do that too. Thank you.
Director?
Yeah, certainly in terms of your worship, if council directs that they wish to be deferred and brought back at a later point in time, staff can certainly do that.
Okay, Councillor Stack?
Just one question, and I probably missed it, but as a result of, if we were to pass the CPPS, does that effectively eliminate the need for the committee of adjustment or just narrow its scope?
The planner?
Yes, thank you. So Committee of Adjustment would still be operational in all areas outside of the CPP area.
Okay. Counselor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. So we have learned that the community permit processing system can actually protect built heritage if we decide to. It's our bill and it's our thing to build as we wish. So we can write things into it to specifically preserve heritage, correct?
Who should I put that to? Who wants it? The consultant, planner?
Yes, definitely we would take direction on that. If there is more intention needed for the community character and heritage, we can take that back.
Counselor?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. In your dealing with these to the consultant, have other communities ever done this on a pilot project?
The consultant?
Done it on a pilot project basis, but in terms of the geographic area, yes. So for example, Innisfil, when they did theirs they first did a development permit system quite a long time ago. It was all about shoreline. And then in their latest iteration, they expanded it to the Alcona district, which is sort of the biggest part of Innisfil. So they first rolled it out for a very specific, narrow purpose, and then they expanded it later on. I'm not sure if there's ever been an instance where a municipality has said, we're just doing this for a year, 5 years, and then that's the sunset. From my discussions with people who have implemented it, it does take a while to educate the public, educate the development community, educate staff as to how this new system is going to operate. And so that takes some time as well. And so that would be the only caveat I would put to the ease with which you could use it as a pilot program as well. If you'll note that in the CPP bylaw, there's transition clauses, which is basically how do you go from like the zoning bylaw system to this new system and like what carries over and what doesn't. And so you'd have to do something for a pilot. You'd have to figure out like the reverse transition, like how would you go back? Like what would a decision made under the CPP bylaw? How would that transition once the bylaw was finished? Just one other thing to note is that there's another difference between the CPP bylaw as written and the zoning bylaw. When you go for a zoning bylaw amendment, you go with a specific application using a specific design, but you actually amend the bylaw in perpetuity. So something can come 20 years later and with a new idea, and if they fit those regulations as amended, they can go ahead as a right. What we're proposing is that the CPP bylaw actually has a window of eligibility, of applicability of that approval, and then there's a sunset to that. So it will actually reduce speculation in some sense, that you're not going to go for a planning application in order to improve what you can build on your land and then sell that land, unless the person who bought it really wanted to do whatever you had stated very quickly. So that's just one other point.
Counselor?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Can we proceed with the CPPS for one town without proceeding for the other? Like, for instance, could we proceed in Port Elgin as a trial and then move from there?
Who wants that? The consultant?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. Those are my questions for now.
Thank you. Counselor Davinsky?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Halpin. That was going to be my question too, as to whether you can do one as opposed to another. But sir, you've been here all night. You've heard the people speak. I think we had a dozen speakers. Basically, all are saying the same. What is your message to them tonight after hearing what they had to say?
The consultant?
I think that the difference between the zoning bylaw and the CPP bylaw, there is the, what's the equivalent of the minor variance having less opportunity for public involvement. And that's a real difference. I don't quite understand, because I don't think that the CPP bylaw as written is creating a huge leap from what is permitted in the zoning bylaw in terms of intensification. So I'm a bit confused as to why, if those changes similar changes had been made to the zoning bylaw, would there be the level of upset that there is? And so I think there's a combination of feeling that they won't be heard in the future, and a concern that their community will be redeveloped in a way that they don't believe in. But I think that through the development, you have urban design guidelines that were part of a public process and approved by council currently. Those are there. Those are referenced in the CPP bylaw. You can also, if you want a CPP bylaw that is connected to a different set of guidelines that focuses on what are the elements that you want to protect in this area, that's a possibility as well. So I think this is, and as I mentioned, it's a much stronger tool than what's permitted through the zoning bylaw. So I think there's perhaps some of the specifics that are upsetting people but they can be tailored to actually address their concerns in a way that's superior to the existing system. That's my opinion.
Councilor Vinsky?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. But the people feel they're losing touch because of and I don't have them up here, but class 1, no notification. Class 2, no notification. Class 3, okay, notification. But we get notification, or the residents get notification for everything. And I think they want that to continue. Can that happen within this CPPS?
The consultant?
Yes, you can, I mean, council delegates what council delegates, and council can set the public notice that they want for any of those application classes. And so, as I mentioned before, in the zoning-based system, if you're as of right, which means you've followed the letter of the law in terms of the regulation, you fit within that box that's described by the zoning bylaw, and you need a site plan control, which is basically how the details of how that plays out at a site level. There's no public notice, and there's delegation to staff already on that. So class 1 it doesn't treat anything differently than the current system. Class 2 is where there is a difference. There's a committee in the current system. There's a committee of adjustment. There's notice that's sent out. People can appear before the committee, have their say. The committee can make that decision in public. And so if you wanted to have council weigh in on those decisions, you could do that. If you could and there could be notice. There could be the same notice as there is today. There could be the same decision-making process as the class 3 permit. I think the reason why we did it as we did it is we thought that we were better defining what a minor variance is, and we were hoping to streamline the whole system. But if people feel that is a threat, and you're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, I think that it would be advisable to maybe rethink what that is and what would be acceptable to council, given council's workload as well.
The councilor?
Thank you for that. And final question, if it is the same and we can change anything as is, why are we doing this? Why wouldn't we just stay with what we've got?
The consultant?
In terms of you stay with the zoning-based system.
Yes, sir. Just, you're saying we can change anything we want and people can attend anything they want, a committee of adjustment and so on. Well, if it's all the same, why are we changing it is what I'm asking. And I don't mean to be argumentative, but why are we changing it?
I think the point was, sorry, Mayor, I'll wait for you. The purpose was to streamline the system. So what is currently, you go through, so say for example, you need a minor variance and you need to go through site plan. Those are things that happen sequentially or can happen sequentially. Same with the zoning bylaw amendment. You do the zoning bylaw amendment, then you do the site plan, and then you go for your permit. And so what the bylaw is saying is like, why are you circulating the same application twice for two different processes? Why don't you just do it once, be more efficient about it, and on a slower timeline? Now, the timelines that were referenced in our previous presentations on this relative to the zoning-based system, what they're referencing is the timelines that are established in the Planning Act before an applicant can appeal to the OLT for non-decision. And so that's 90 days for a zoning bylaw amendment, 60 days for site plan, and minor variance 30 days. And in the system that you have for the CPP bylaw, it's 45 days. That's before the applicant can appeal to the OLT. And so it's a constrained timeline. And I actually don't think that if you have to do public notice and hold a council meeting, have a staff report and make a decision, circulate the application to agencies, that would be very difficult to meet on a 45-day timeline. But still, it's more efficient than doing the site plan and the zoning bylaw amendment separately. So it is about trying to expedite the process and make it more efficient. And then as well, mentioning this little corner of the Planning Act and regulations that the province sort of, I don't know if they purposely left it as a loophole or if it is sort of like a forgotten corner of planning legislation where powers that municipalities used to have still exist in this little corner where they've been stripped out in the name of providing more housing in other parts of the Planning Act.
Okay, I'll just, I think everyone else is gone, so I'll ask a question myself. Just one question from me. As was noted by one member of the public, this whole thing was made possible by the Housing Accelerator Fund, right? It's being driven, the intent is to enable housing. So that's my question, and I would like to get some clarity from yourself or perhaps from the planner around how this does that, right? What is it about the CPPS that enables housing to be built in our community in a way that is more affordable, more accessible to folks who are looking for it? That's the whole reason behind doing this. So what is it about it that does that, the consultant?
So the idea is intensification. And what I've heard from people that have submitted comments that have attended the public open house is that there's concern about intensification. And I think then the next step is to look at the existing urban design guidance and to think, is that good enough, or do we need to tweak it? Because I think this is the CPP process, and the development and the tweaking of those guidelines could be the process by which intensification is made palatable to people because they feel comfortable within the boundaries that have been set for it. I think that's a way of meeting both your Housing Accelerator Fund desire for intensification and giving the community the security that they feel comfortable with the intensification that will be happening. So it's the conversation about, in a detailed way, which is something that zoning bylaws and CPP bylaws don't always do. In terms of regulation, the zoning bylaw is pretty black and white. And as much as it's horrible to read our CPP bylaw, I'm not sure if you've read a zoning bylaw lately, but they're not like great works of prose. And so I think that, and there are communities that integrate urban design guidance into the actual bylaw, but I think that is, you're constraining the municipality in terms of how that guidance might evolve over time. You'd have to go through an entire CPP bylaw amendment in order to change some guidance. So I think it would be easier just to change the guidance, have that guidance be approved by council, and therefore support the CPP bylaw. So that's a bit of a long-winded answer to your question, but I think there's a win-win to be found here, I think.
And you think that so what you're saying is that the setting out guidelines in the context of a CPPS somehow gives members of the public the ability to control intensification in a way that a zoning bylaw doesn't, or to have agency over intensification in a way that they don't under the existing zoning bylaw or site plan control bylaw? Like, I just, what is perhaps I'm just not fully understanding your explanation. Like, what is it about the CPPS that gives the public more agency? Because that's what would create more acceptance, right? Is having a greater level of agency over the outcome. What is it about CPPS that gives the public more agency than they have today through their zoning bylaw and through the site plan control bylaws passed by this council?
So as I mentioned in my presentation, so the CPP bylaw is like one part of that planning framework, right? You want all parts of your planning framework sort of moving in the same direction to support a vision. And so that's the official plan, that's the regulation, and then that's the guidance. I would say that under the CPP system, the weight of guidance is what it once was for all municipalities, circa 2017. In 2022, that was sort of stripped. The ability to use guidance was sort of stripped and weakened in a substantial way by removing the consideration of exterior design from the site plan control process. You can't even really ask for information regarding what exterior design is going to be, nor can you include it as a condition or in a site plan agreement. Whereas you can still do that in a CPP bylaw and its relationship. Now, what the other possibility is that you still want to allow the intensification. I think that's what the Housing Accelerator Fund was about. That's what your official plan says right now. So you have to find an appropriate level of intensification. And honestly, many people just do not want change in their community really at all. So you could also, that guidance could also be used to really lock down development potential and intensification potential. And I don't think that is not what the exercise was supposed to be about. And I don't think that ultimately in the long term serves the current and future residents of Saugeen Shores to lock down what can be built to an extreme level, to a no change level.
So just one more final follow-up from me, just so I'm clear then. What it boils down to then is, as Councillor Grace and some others have mentioned, then the ability for council to reassert some of the authority on behalf of the public that it had prior to some of the recent provincial legislation, reassert the ability to have this body have a say in areas like site plan control, like the appearance of buildings, these kinds of things. Like that's what you're saying, is that's where you get the agency that the public doesn't have today, is in being able to reassert those authorities that we used to have but no longer have. Am I understanding that right?
I would say so, yes.
Okay. Further questions from the members? I'll get the Deputy Mayor.
One of the questions I didn't ask, the draft bylaw we have is dated June the 10th. The public meeting was June the 24th. There were 150 plus people there. Many of us were there as well. And of course, a lot of submissions came in. I was hopeful that the draft bylaw would have been somehow affected by all of that. Maybe this is more of a comment than a question, but Councillor Davinsky asked about, how you've been impacted, or, what you've heard from people. Was there, to me, it doesn't appear as though there was any change from June the 10th taking into account what happened on June the 24th and then subsequently the submissions that came in. I'll give you a chance to answer, but I would just ask that if this comes back, that whatever draft is presented, that it show tracking so that there's an indication of how some of the comments from both members of council, members of the public, and just, you know, awareness of opportunities to strengthen language in various places, that it's obvious that there has been consideration for some of the things that have been said. Because were there any adjustments made? Because for what it's worth, from the March meeting to the June 10th bylaw, there were some things that changed. And I think, you know, some members of the public understood that when they went to the meeting on June the 24th, or they understood it after, you know, asking some questions of a few of us. It's like, no, the height came down, you know, it's back where it is now for most of the properties that are in the perceived area. But was there anything, because I had really been hopeful that there'd be some character definition, longer sentences. But was there anything that you have brought into what we're talking about tonight that came from that public meeting, or that came from, you know, the submissions? And it kind of goes along with what Councillor Davinsky was asking.
The consultant?
I think, yeah, and maybe I'll defer to either the county or town, because it wasn't the intended process. It was we were going to present the bylaw was not going to change in terms of what we heard from the public at the open house and tonight. Because honestly, the public open house was, the intent of it is for people to be able to learn and to ask questions and to inform themselves so that they can show up tonight and make sure that everybody who wants to have a say has a say. The public meeting on the 24th sort of evolved into that, but it sort of evolved into it imperfectly, in that not everybody who wanted to speak got to speak. And so I think what we have now is we have a complete record of people's thoughts on the bylaw and the official plan amendment as they learned about on the 24th, and as they've expressed this evening and in prior through written comments.
Mark Powley will speak to it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add to that explanation that the way to think about this is that we have two venues for one step. So we had a public open house, which is one way of presenting information and one way of talking to people about the proposals. And then we have the public meeting, which is a different way of presenting the information. And it also provides a direct role for council in the discussion. And so now we have the open house record, we have the public meeting record, and we will take the totality of that record, digest that, and then that will be brought back. And we take the point that we will make the changes obvious so that they're well understood.
Further brief questions, Councillor Stack.
So just in terms of process, so I think we spoke earlier about some of the benefits from a cultural heritage perspective that's available through the CPPS, but just to clarify in my mind, so while we've limited, once you put a CPPS in place, a decision through that process can't be appealed by third parties. But if we were to make a decision that protected, that took advantage of some sort of heritage measure we put in place, is there anything to stop the developer from appealing that decision to the Land Tribunal, Ontario Land Tribunal?
Consultant?
In terms of, I'm not a heritage planner, so I'm not a.
Pick anything that you're more familiar with. My point is just, can a decision?
Yes, a decision can be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal.
And so is the corollary of that if the provisions of the bylaw related to the CPPS, and a decision is made on that basis, then a developer could challenge it through the Ontario Land Tribunal, as they do today through the regular planning process.
Consultant?
That's right. In both instances, you can appeal a decision, and in both instances, also the zoning bylaw-based system no longer has third-party appeals either. There's no third-party appeals, which means it's the applicant who can appeal. It's not a neighbor. It's not a community group. That just is not something that exists in Ontario anymore.
Okay, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
I'm just ready to make comments.
Okay, we will. I'm just going to conclude with the questions then, make sure there's no further questions before I close the public meeting. If not, then okay. If there's no further questions, then I will now declare the public meeting to be closed, and I'll read the resolution for consideration. The resolution then is that local official plan amendment L-2026-008 and community planning permit bylaw Z-2026-038 community planning permit system by the town of Saugeen Shores be received for information. Is there a mover and seconder for the resolution? Councillor Halpin, the deputy mayor. I'm going to do a round of comments, one comment each. So we're going to go around and do it that way. The vice deputy mayor.
One comment each?
I'm not coming back, so get it all out.
Oh. Don't put the timer on, Councilman. Don't put the timer on. First of all, I wanted to thank the members of the public for their passion. I thought your comments, your written submissions, I tried to read them all. There were a lot. This one, probably more submissions than I've ever received for any file. I thought the presentations tonight were very respectful, and that's one of the beautiful things about, I think, serving on council is you get to hear from members of the public and hear them out. Things, and we don't always agree. There's sometimes we're going to disagree, but I think the beauty of it is there was a lot of great comments that we hit a nerve, obviously, with the permitting system and CPP, and that's okay. I think it's good you spoke out, and I had a good chat with the planner from Huntsville today for a half hour, a senior planner, and they talked a lot of good things about the community permit planning system, and they talked about streamlining, and they talk about lots of good stuff around staff. Yes, it empowers staff a little bit more, but it helps move planning on a little bit quicker than what we're doing right now. That's one of the major complaints I receive from planners, that things take a little too long. And so they're tested and tried, and it took them 5 years though. It took Huntsville 5 years to implement their system, and they're really happy with it, and it's paid dividends for the town of Huntsville. So I heard a lot of good comments there. Listening to your comments about protecting tree canopy, I agree. Preserve and protect our heritage, I agree. Standardized guidelines, but supported by our residents. I agree. Southampton is distinct. I agree. And so is Port Elgin, and so is Saugeen Township. And I think that there's this is a major decision, of course, that should not be rushed. And what I'm about to say is not a political statement, because I'm not running this fall. I made a decision after 12 years to not run. So I want to say to you that I think this should be deferred till after the election. I really do believe that, and that's not political statement. I just really believe that we shouldn't rush this policy. There's a lot of concern with it that I've heard raised from a lot of Southampton residents mostly. And I think some of them are genuine and real concerns that we need to pay attention to. And I think that we need to look at best practices. I think we need to look at what's going on in Huntsville, which I really think is a really solid system. And I think someday perhaps there is room, for a community permit planning system. Maybe just not today, perhaps, but I think that over time, I think it's not a bad thing to do it. I know people don't probably agree with that, but I think there are a lot of benefits to a planning permit system that help speed up the planning process. So, but I think there's a lot of good cases out there that could be studied, and I think council needs to do that, and staff is take a look at the best practices from other municipalities, see what's working, what's not working, and what was some of the pitfalls early in the process too. I think that's okay to do that, to take a step back and make sure we make, quote, that informed decision. So I have, I'm going to present it, whether it's now or later, but that's to defer any decision pertaining to the community planning permit system till after the 2027 election. So I'd like to put that on the floor at some point tonight, Mr. Mayor, because I think that's the right thing to do in this situation. Thank you.
Okay, well, you made a motion. Is there a seconder for the motion to defer? Seconded by Councillor Davinsky. So we can discuss the motion to defer in the context of, we'll make this a discussion about the motion to defer, but you can make comments about the overall item as part of it. Councillor Stack?
Okay, so should I just limit my comments for this round to the motion to defer?
I think you can, we're discussing a motion to defer, but we're discussing a motion to defer the CPPS, so you can continue to
Okay.
discuss CPPS.
So there may
in
be two
context.
paragraphs to my comments then, just to be clear. So I heard all the feedback. I thought, I found it a bit interesting, some of the feedback. I think it's just worth reminding folks that we're also taxpayers and residents. So some of the feedback I hear, maybe I'm being extra sensitive today. Usually I'm pretty laissez-faire about it, but some of the feedback suggests that, at least how I took it, is that we're not considering your feedback and as if we're not residents and part of this community. We're here because we are part of the community. So I think when you provide that feedback, I appreciate it. I heard it. I engage with many of you. I see many names and faces that I engage with regularly. I think on Facebook is the specific one. I've spoken to some of you at your homes, outside of the council room. So I just want to remind folks that when you're providing us commentary and concern, just remember we do live here. So when we make these decisions, we are also living with the products of those decisions. So I just don't want you coming away with this notion that we make a decision and then sort of bounce and are part of the communities that we serve. Having said that, my perspective on this may surprise, may not. I would actually be in favor of having this vote in this current election cycle for a couple of reasons. We actually do have a mandate. We were elected for this term in council, so I think we should be prepared to be accountable for the decisions we make. And I'm prepared, and as I've said to many of you over the 4 years almost, I take accountability for the decisions I make. So I'm happy to vote for this before the end of council because I think you should know how I would vote on it. If it's an important issue to you, I think it warrants understanding where I would sit on the issue. Having said all that, so having reviewed the materials, I'll be honest, I'm just not really sure there's a ton of value in this process. Because I don't really see us, I've heard the measures around, there's some protections for heritage, but as we noted, it's still subject to appeal in the Ontario Land Tribunal and its decisions, because ultimately we exist in a current regime, a political regime in Ontario that supports development over other measures. So from my perspective, given the feedback, and I would say there's a lack of understanding. So I'm just not sure, with all the change we're putting in front of people and some of the concerns we've had recently around some of the development, I don't know that it's an appropriate time to be putting a CPPS process in place. So I won't be voting in favor of it on that basis. I think we should be focusing on issues that are really important and provide a direct benefit. So, I've seen some folks here from the Blue Water development discussions earlier. And so I think from my perspective, that was a policy and a decision that requires a lot of attention and is worth some hard discussions. I don't see this particular regime or proposal as warranting sort of a lot of effort from the town. I think we have a lot of other areas we should be focused on, and I haven't been sold on the value of the process in front of us. I do think it's relative, like, yes, there's some bureaucracy involved, but I think given the concerns on development and, I've heard the feedback on the trust, and I do hear a lot of concerns around trust and accountability. So I think on that basis, from my perspective, I'm going to focus on issues that I think can have a direct benefit. So when we look at some of the development proposals we've put forward here when it comes to affordable housing, something I can point to and say that will provide affordable housing. I am always a bit resistant and skeptical of measures that say, oh, it could improve housing affordability. Like, I think the notion is here, more housing, cheaper rates. Like, I understand supply and demand, although I think housing works a bit differently. So I just don't see, with all the other issues we have in front of us and with the concern around trust, while I think we have reviewed this, I think this has been in front of council since 2022. So the feedback that it's being rushed, I think, is not an entirely fair critique. I hear it and I'm responding to it, but I think it is important to reiterate that this has been in front of council since 2022. It may seem like it's new, and that's fair, but I don't want people coming away from here thinking that we're just sort of spitballing ideas on council and making decisions kind of willy-nilly. That's not the case. But again, just to reiterate, from my perspective, I don't see enough to put it bluntly, on this particular measure, I just don't think the juice is worth the squeeze. And on that basis, I'm not going to vote for it, whether we vote for it in August, September, or, if I'm on the next council, based on where we're at today, I won't vote for it. And I just think wherever we decide, I think given the interest in the community, I wanted to explain specifically why I won't vote for it, and why I think there are just other measures and policies in town that I think are more important at this point that we should be prioritizing. Thanks.
You, Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we're just speaking on this motion, I do have comments about this and I know we've been going at this for a long time, but I would support the motion because it's not ready. To me, I would be voting against it, and I may be there. The protections for heritage are minimal, in my opinion. And the information about the fact that we may be able to, as I said, circumvent or escape from the provincial removal, stripping away of our municipal rights, that may be able to happen in a CPPS, but it's not in this one. And I think we need to have it nailed down in the language, just as we need a lot of specific standards for heritage protection. So I would like, it's just not ready to for us to fairly decide on whether, and I don't think it can be ready. One of the things that I would like to see happen is I'd like to see the public being consulted on what their opinion of our character is and our community character. And that was something that council had given direction on almost a year ago. And for a variety of reasons, it hasn't happened. To defer this until the next council would give an opportunity to take that very important step of getting that community consultation on what is our character. And I'm talking about specifics like features like Port Elgin and Southampton's relationship to Lake Huron and the Saugeen River, connections to early industries, building materials, what our established traditional neighborhoods are like, the preservation of public and private green spaces. There are a lot of specifics that we see in other municipalities that have been successful at protecting their heritage downtowns like Niagara-on-the-Lake, which has very specific wording. So anyway, I will be voting in favor to defer until the next council.
Thank you. Councillor Maida, any comments from you? No? So we'll come over to Davinsky and come back up to the Deputy Mayor. Councillor Davinsky, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, in looking over everything, I think it's a little unfair, maybe I'm misreading it, that staff would be making planning decisions that should be made by council. That's what we were elected to do. And judging by the letters we've all received, citizens don't want to be left out either. There may be some improvements based on suggestions received by residents, but it's not enough as far as I can tell. Why are we in such a hurry at the potential expense of our downtowns? I know I'm certainly not. Based on the mail I've received, all of it has come from Southampton. I know there were a couple of Port Elgin speakers today. And should we deduce from that Port Elgin is not in such a tizzy about this? I think they are. And if so, If they aren't, that's fine. Let's try it for a year as suggested by Councillor Halpin in Port Elgin and leave south as it is. But hearing further comments around the table, maybe the deferral is the route to go and then look at it again. But even then, I'm not so sure I would vote for it. The deputy mayor brought up a great point with the June 10th bylaw, but nothing from the June 24th meeting was in that bylaw. And unless it was decided, no, it's not good enough, or it hasn't been done, we've got to leave them time to do this. So again, I ask, why are we in such a hurry? I will be voting against the CPPS. Thank you.
Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I don't agree with deferring it. We're not a lame duck council. And we're elected to do a job, and we should do our job. And whether it gets, we can proceed with this. What are we going to do? Everything that comes up that's a little bit controversial, well, let's just put it off. We got a job to do. We're elected to do it. We should do it. So on this topic though, just to do all my comments at once, development is going to happen. There's a lot of people, you're right, people don't like change. People don't want change. But change is going to happen. To the people that move here, no one gave you permission to move here. You moved here. And people are going to continue to move here. And we do have a housing crisis. So, and in a way, my view of it is almost opposite what some people think. I felt like the CPP could give us more control over development. We could claw back some of what the provincial government has taken away from us. That is one advantage of it. We could claw back a little bit of that. And the thing about appeals, just part of the system of our country of British common law that we have, everyone has the right to appeal. There will always be appeals. You can appeal your parking ticket, a speeding ticket. You can appeal everything. There will always be appeals, will be part of it. So one thing, I just returned from Canmore, Alberta, and I think Canmore should be kind of a sister city of us because they're both the same population. They face a lot of the same problems. They face a lot of the same issues and everything. And I asked my son walking through Canmore, which is just a beautiful city. I said, how do they convince all these developers to have this style and promote this type of building? Like every building is done that way. And my son is in real estate. He's a mortgage broker and he's well established in Canmore, lived there for 10 years now. And he basically, they do that through their community permit planning system by a different name. They make all new builds and everything follow a style that reflects the character of Canmore. So I want to thank everyone for all their comments. There's been lots of them. I tried to read them all, and to tell you the truth, I haven't been able to read them all yet, but I will read them and I hope to respond to them all. And I hear you that people aren't happy with the way that this is right now. So my proposal, or what I would like to see, is we've invested a lot in this to throw it away. Maybe what we should do is just concentrate on it in Port Elgin and see, take more time and develop it and see the strength and the things that we can build into this system to actually do some of the things that you people are talking about, preserving the built heritage, preserving our downtown and preserving those type of things. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but a guy could buy a store downtown in Port Elgin or Southampton and just tear it down and build something new. There's not a law we saying that he couldn't do that. People have property rights. So anyways, those are my things. I do not think that we should defer this. We should deal with it. I would like to see this, to do it as a pilot in Port Elgin, and you could set a time on it and take it from there and build it strong. Listen to your comments and claw back a bit of what the provincial government has taken away from us. You know, one time you got to comment on before few years ago, we got to comment on a fourplex or anything. Now people can build 11 units without us saying a word on it. So, you know, anyways, I've made my points. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The Deputy Mayor?
I think we're supposed to combine two things into one. Is that we're doing comments and response to the motion?
Yeah, that's right. We are
Um,
discussing the motion to defer and making comments.
I've been listening and what Councillor Halpin just said about what was going on in Canmore about how development, I'm not going to quote you exactly, but that things were possible that followed a style that reflected the spirit of Canmore. That's what I heard you say. Councillor Grace mentioned about how, you know, a year ago we talked about and I thought we had also directed that we would have the conversation about character and see what we could come up with. Those two things go together. So in terms of the actual motion, I'm fine with deferring it because I don't think we're ready yet. I think, you know, we've got one shot to really make an impact because I agree with what Councillor Halpin said about pulling back some of the things that have faded away from us, but I think we need to get it right. I would like to see us have those conversations, have whatever we need to do to come up with something that comes closer to a definition of character. And I go back to when I was first on council, the official plan had more language in it about character and we took it out. Well, let's go back and revisit some of that language and have that be a jumping point. Let's draw the picture, let's update the guidelines and then use them and follow a style that defines the spirit of the place. So I think we have a chance to get there. I just don't think it's in the next 3 planning meetings, which is what we have before the election. A couple of other comments. One of the things that the planner said was that one of the differences between this and a zoning bylaw is that, you know, zoning sets up something as a right and, you know, it was put into play. And again, I'm paraphrasing, put into play and at a certain time and, you know, now you're just dealing with it. Well, I would ask us on council to look at, you know, what was put into some zoning stuff at a time when it was relevant and important and maybe identify and correct some of that stuff because there are things in the zoning bylaw that has a right that no longer make any sense. So that's a challenge that anybody who's going to be on council next time, I think that there are some opportunities there to deal with the has of right that we've got in the zoning bylaw that might reflect something that was important 20 years, 15 years, 10 years ago that is not relevant anymore. I do want to also, though, just particularly point out, and I'm glad that Mr. Stanley is still here. I think he's still back there. Please wave if you're still here. I really appreciated this time, all of the public comments, and I've said this many times, I always appreciate the passion, good, bad, indifferent, positive, whatever it is. I've always appreciated that as a member of council. This time there were some submissions came in that I knew were from young dads in our community that I'd never heard from before. And young dads who had kids that were playing hockey, going to school, were walking on the streets, were trying to play in parks and that sort of thing. So I very much appreciated that you stepped up to the mic and said something because those are you know, important messages to get into play because, you know, you're here now. You know, in some cases you've been here forever, like the young dad over there. But some of you have come for a Bruce Power job and you've chosen us over a neighboring community. But you have kids here and the community that we're working on creating is in many ways for them because people sat in a council chamber or at a council table before us to create the community that we're in now. So I just wanted, all of the comments were respected and appreciated by me, but I was particularly noting a couple of dads that I knew who had sent in written submissions, and I'm so grateful that you stepped up to the mic today. Just as a comment that maybe gets a little bit closer to some of the things that Councillor Stack said. One of the things I heard was about a decline in what's here. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't agree with that at all, because our community has continued to attract seasonal people to become permanent residents. It's attracted new permanent residents. It's attracted new seasonal residents. It's attracted new families who've come here for employment and again chosen us over neighboring communities. It's also kept some of us our entire lives. And those of us that have been here either at a cottage that then became a permanent resident, or, you know, as a kid in a school that we're still here raising our own kids, sending them to the same school we went to. We've seen change, and maybe we haven't always agreed with it, but we've kind of embraced it and still kept this place with a spirit and a specialness that we all want to protect. So let's have the conversations to define it a little bit more, because change has added to all of that in ways that hasn't always been negative. So I'll just say that I've spoken before at council many times about those of us taxpayers, as Rachel said, we've invested money in property here, and in many ways, council does our best to protect those investments for all of us, and all of us are taxpayers. But I see opportunity in the CPPS. I do not like the delegation of authority at all, but I do see opportunity very much akin to what Councillor Halpin just said. But I just don't think we're there yet. And I would like to take the time to get it right so that we do have the opportunities to take back and take advantage of what we can still to, in some ways, help have things follow a style that reflects the spirit of Saugeen Shores. So I'm in favor of the motion, just because I don't think we're ready yet. But you know, my opinion is that we need to engage more with people and have that flow more into this so that we know what that spirit is that we're trying to protect. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, everybody. Thank you all for your call. You want to say something else? Councillor Mayette, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't realize we were doing the whole range of comments. I thought we were just talking about the motion to defer, which I'll just say, I think we should vote on it now. I mean, we're not voting on the whole plan anyway. We're only voting on receiving it here tonight. And I'm in favor of doing just that. But when it comes to the CPP, you know, the more we've talked about it, and it's been years, the more I've learned that it's a good tool, and it gets us back things that we've lost. And it's going to attract, you know, the question was, you know, what does it do to promote housing? Well, if you're a developer, and we have several developers in the room here today, if you're a developer and you're looking at doing a development in a community, and you see a community that has a CPPS in place, well, that becomes an attractive community to do that in. Because you can say, well, I know exactly what the rules are. I don't have to invest a bunch of money and putting a plan together that may or may not get passed, or put a whole bunch of permits in that may or may not get passed, and go through a process that may take up to a year and not know if I'm going to get any investment return on that, because there's all these different hoops you got to jump through. Where the CPPS, it lays it out. If you do X, Y, Z, you get your permit and you're ready to go. So I think that there's a tremendous advantage to doing it that way. And that's why I'm in favor of exploring this, even if it's in one community, not the other. I mean, a lot of it is hinging around this idea of community character and heritage. And, you know, to quote the great Ted Lasso, to paraphrase Ted Lasso, I think community character and heritage is like pornography. It's difficult to describe in words, but you'll know it when you see it. The Supreme Court said that. Yeah. The U.S. Supreme Court, but Ted Lasso said it so that's where I learned it. So you know, it all comes down to what someone's perception of heritage is. I mean, the towns that we live in now, they didn't look like this 50 years ago. They didn't look like this 100 years ago. Change happens. Change is going to happen. The styles of buildings are going to change. And what the kids that are growing up today, they'll remember the new buildings and the way it is today as the heritage. So heritage is perception, and it's each to each is older, and so I think that there's advantages to this. It gets us some, it's a loophole back to some of the powers that we had that were taken away. And for those reasons, I would be in favor of the CPPS. Thanks.
You? Well, thank you all for your comments, and we do have a motion to defer on the table. I want to appreciate, say thank you to all the members of the public for coming in tonight and giving us all of your thoughts and all of the things that you've written to council. Lots of comments, great comments, and obviously, as has been noted, it's drawn a lot of interest in the community, which is good because I think, you know, there's no such thing as a perfect system, no such thing as a perfect planning regime. The one we have isn't perfect. It's got its problems for sure. And so we should always be interested, I think, in looking at better ways to do these things. What ways can we try to improve the system, not only for everybody, for every property owner in the community, and for municipal purposes in terms of being more efficient, more cost effective. You know, I think all of those things are important things to consider. But of course, as I said before, the bottom line of this whole thing for me has always been about housing, trying to, and remember, this is part of the pantheon of things that we have been working on to try to advance housing, like a whole suite of things that there's, 8 projects in that housing accelerator application. This is one of those 8, right? So we're trying to advance a whole bunch of things, and we're trying to be, and granted, we're trying to do things that are very innovative. Like we're trying to look at the most innovative things. And everybody's noted, and they're absolutely right. Not very many municipalities in Ontario have tried community permit planning systems. It's a hard thing to do, as is demonstrated here. It's a tough community conversation. It's a challenging thing to put in place. And that's why most communities haven't tried it. We're trying it. We're putting it out there to see, well, what could we do this? Is it something that our community could accept? Is it something that would make things better with respect to housing? I am concerned, though, when I asked the question about, when it comes down to it, how does this enhance the housing question? And the answer is that it enables us to get more buy-in for intensification because it allows us to engage, to slip around new restrictions in the Planning Act. To me, that's pretty thin gruel, because the province, like the eye of Sauron is watching, and the province will eventually find the CPPS. And if they believe that it's taking away or might take away from their intent, they'll instantly wipe those things out, instantly, just like they've done 100 times in 100 different ways, right? So if we were to do this successfully and it was to become successful, other communities began to adopt it, and it started to run contrary to the province's desires, the whole premise for the housing argument would go away because the province would wipe it out. For me, because that's for me what it comes down to: housing affordability, getting more housing constructed, and if streamlining the process can help make housing more affordable, then that to me is worth doing. I don't yet hear the argument that says that that's a slam dunk with this thing. And to me, it wouldn't be worth the pain and the attempt to convince the public if there wasn't that payoff. So I'm not convinced yet that it's a thing that we should do. I had hoped in all of this, as we looked at it for the past several years, as Councillor Stack rightly pointed out, we've been looking at it for a very long time. I'd hoped that by the time we got to this point, we would hear a stronger argument on the housing piece, and I just don't hear it yet. So I don't know. I'm fine with the deferral, is so long as what we're doing is deferring it. I don't want to just punt it to the next council to get back just what we got today so that they can get stuck here again. That's not fair to them either. What I would like is to say to staff, for me at least, come back with something that gives me a stronger argument on housing. How does this give me a CPPS that gets us some affordable housing? That's what I want. And then I've heard from members of the public, they want a CPPS that speaks more to heritage. They want a CPPS that speaks more to the environment, several things. You heard it all, staff's recorded it all, lots of things. And, those are what we're going to have to address if we want to do it, if we want to pass it. So go away and make it stronger in those ways. To me, if it's gonna get my vote, it's gotta give me a better argument on housing. I guess that's the only point I can make today. I do want to say though, just in conclusion, that I really appreciate the work that the planners and everybody has done. It's because I just want to reiterate that what the town of Saugeen Shores is trying to do here is do innovative things to advance housing. We're trying to do, and you see the things like these, and they're all tough conversations, whether it's the affordable housing projects we're building, other regulatory changes we're making. But that's what we're trying to do is be a leader on this, because we believe being a leader on that will make our community a better place for everybody. So that's what we're doing. And anyway, that's enough for me. I support the deferral, but want to see back a better product when it comes back. I said one time, Councillor Grace, but one Councillor Grace.
I thought we were just talking on the deferral motion, but I just wanted to say that, and I think this is important corollary to what you just said. I think the reason that we're having these issues with heritage and everything is because it's the commercial core, it's the downtowns that are precious. I think we should be going back, if we're taking this time to defer, to look back at highway commercial. I mean, the prices for rents and purchase in the downtown are going to be at a high level. We've got a parking issue in the downtowns that's never going to go away. It's always, and we don't have public transportation for people. So I think we should be looking at, if we are serious about a CPPS, let's look at highway commercial.
Or potentially a residential part of the community. Pick a residential area and talk about a CPPS there if we're talking about advancing housing. Yes, I think, anyway, I've already said my piece. I'm not going to break my own rule. I already spoke.
Mr. Mayor, as the mover of the motion, can I just one last comment?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Vice Deputy Mayor, on the motion to defer.
okay, I just around the table, what I'm hearing is that there are just too many unanswered questions. And I just want to make a comment, Councillor Halpin. It were hard to make tough decisions. Over my 12 years on this council, I've made a lot of really, really tough decisions. A lot of tough decisions. So I'm not backing away from this vote. If I was around this table, I'm not afraid to make a decision on CPP. But I just think we're not ready, is what our Deputy Mayor alluded to. And so that's why I'm moving the motion to defer, is that I just think we're not ready.
Okay. Further discussion on the motion to defer. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. So what happens if we defer? Does staff quit working on it? Is it just shelved till after the election, or like what exactly does this mean if we defer this? Thank you.
I would just note that the resolution that was before us before was just to receive for information. Staff was always going to take it away with all the comments that have been heard, all the council comments, and come up with a new product on the basis of that. What council is saying, if it passes this, is do all that work, but just don't come back to us until probably early in the new year. I would say the new council oughtn't be hit with this in the late fall and the winter time. It should come back potentially in the winter, but after in the year 2027. Is there any further discussion on the motion to defer? All in favor of the motion to defer? And oppose? That's carried. Okay, thank you all. So let's take we'll take a short break because I'm sure everybody needs one. Council will reconvene at 10 after 10. Okay to go? Just wait for Councillor Stack to take her seat. Okay, so now we're on to reports of municipal officers and committees. The first one is on local official plan amendment L-2025-018 and zoning bylaw amendment Z-2025-062 for Southampton 2 zone. Are there any comments from who's on it, the manager or the planner? The planner?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Charbonneau. This particular application was before council on June 15th. Council did direct staff to consider comments that had been received by Launch Property Group and their consulting team. Those comments, including the engineering analysis, has been reviewed in consultation with the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, and the changes implemented and included in the amendments that are before you today. I did want to note that specifically the zoning bylaw that is in the bylaw section of the agenda, we had accidentally omitted Schedule D, and so that schedule should be included in the final bylaw should council decide to approve it this evening.
Okay, thank you. There is a resolution that council adopt bylaw 61-2026 for local official plan amendment L-2025-018 Southampton 2 zone, and that it be forwarded to Bruce County for approval. That council approves zoning bylaw amendment Z-2025-062 Southampton 2 zone and bylaw 62-2026. And that council resolve that no further notice is necessary with respect to the minor change in the proposed zoning bylaw amendment in accordance with the provisions of section 3417 of the Planning Act. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Gray, seconded by Mayette. Discussion from the members. The deputy mayor and then Halpin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the comment about Schedule D. Schedule D, the mapping is pretty dramatic in terms of identifying some properties that are wholly residential at the moment that, there now might be something else that impacts them. It's not here, but is it possible to encourage promotion and a social media post or something that sets the stage for residents, if they happen to see the map, that they can access information to understand what it could mean for them. Because there are some properties that the entire property is now showing up as being in the spill area, and it's different than what they might have known. So just a little publicity, is that possible? Just to, flag, because I know we're not going to reach out and contact all of those properties, but at least make an effort to inform a little bit better than just through us.
The director.
Thanks for the question, and through you, your worship. Yeah, we could do a media sort of advising the public that this has been put into place and encourage people to check it out.
Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I'd like to thank staff for cooperating and working along to get this all put together and to take the additional work that was done and put it into this one bylaw. So I really appreciate that. And again, this is good news for Southampton, that it's going to free up some land, much needed land for housing and everything. So, and it was kind of neat just to be involved with all this through the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, the public meetings and dealing with the developers and everything like that. And so I think it's a real success thing for us. And it's also going to fit in well with our whole drainage thing that we're working on for that flat area of Southampton. So thank you.
Any further questions or comments from the members? I think just if we're going to do media on it, we want to be very clear that what the town of Saugeen Shores has done here is reduce the area subject to the floodplain, right? We don't want to do media that makes it seem as though the town has introduced a bunch of additional limitations. Which is how it could be perceived. So you have to be very careful about how you communicate about this, because the 2 zone is taking this limitation off of a great deal of private property, not adding the floodplain to it. So anyway, it's worth being cautious. And I also wanted to note, because the reason why this was deferred was in order to have a chance to review the submission from Launch Property Group and the new mapping or the revised mapping for their properties that was created by Greenland. And it seems pretty clear, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that all of that has been incorporated as presented now into the bylaw, which I think is very positive. I think that that's what we hoped would be able to be done with the consent of the Conservation Authority, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm very pleased to see that, and ultimately very pleased to see this two zoning done, because as I say, this is the developable area, the long-standing settlement area of Southampton. We need to build as intensively in that area as we possibly can in the coming decades, so that we don't have to reach out even further beyond the settlement area of Southampton and eat up even more farmland and treed areas and stuff beyond that settlement area. Let's build in the long-standing settlement area that's been the settlement area for 150 years, and leave the rest of what's around there untouched as much as we possibly can. So I think this helps with that an awful lot. So thanks to everybody for your work on it. And with that, you've heard the resolution. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. All right, so now we're on to the consent agenda. There are 4 items there. So I have a resolution that items 10.1 through 10.4 be approved and received for information. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Davinsky. So we'll just walk through them quickly here, and you guys can have any questions you want. 10.1 on site plan control application for 5094 Highway 21. Any questions on it? Councillor Helpin?
Can we make comments?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're not a public meeting. Okay, anyways, I just think that this is gonna look, it's gonna look good. I understand there's just maybe a little less open space, but still more than the requirement. It's gonna clean up that corner nicely. And I've long been a proponent of this type of building where, you know, you have mixed use. So you have your commercial on the bottom, and then above there, you have residential units, and you have shared parking lots, and it is a really affordable and smart way to add housing. So kudos to the builders for this plan, and I'd like to see more like them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this one? Mayette and then Grace?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just say the improvements on that corner are already visible with the work that's been done. So kudos to the developer for going so quickly with it. And the site plan looks excellent, and I'm really looking forward to a finished product. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Grace?
Yeah, I was just wondering about the survey and what happened with that, that the survey was done after the approval of the zoning bylaw amendment.
And the manager?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So the zoning bylaw amendment was processed, and it wasn't deemed as being required to have that survey done ahead of time. There was survey information available, but I don't believe it had gone to the extent of verifying. And so there just happened to be a discrepancy on the width of the property. And the developer and their consultant worked pretty diligently to ensure that they could align their proposal with the zoning bylaw that had already been passed without having to seek further relief.
Okay, further, the Deputy Mayor?
I was going to ask about the survey situation too. Is it normally not something that is required when an application comes in? Could it be? Because it would seem that it would just make sense to verify information up front instead of having, you know, a longer extension at the end to revisit stuff.
The manager?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Charbonneau. Yes, there's been discussions between staff at the county and town to determine what should be the best practice in these situations so that we have the best available information. If there are applications coming before council, we want to ensure that we're not finding out that there's a discrepancy later in the process that could have a major impact to the proposal. So yes, we've had those discussions and are seeking ways to ensure that that information is available earlier in the process.
Okay, anything further on this one? Not seeing anything. Then we'll move on to 10.2, site plan control application for 300 Railway Street. Any comments on this one? The Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, and I do appreciate that. I think after the agenda, we did see an architectural rendering because it was what we received in the agenda. It looked like it was single story, so the architectural rendering is much more attractive. I don't know if that proponent is here, but I wanted to, I know we have little to say maybe about site plans and that sort of thing, but we had a different proposal on this lot that we had reviewed, and we had worked hard to get a sense of landscaping up adjacent to the highway, because it is on the Southampton Parkway, the gateway way in. And I did want to specifically ask, for that to hopefully carry over to this process. But also there is quite a ridge of existing big trees kind of along the crevice, or whatever you want to call it, the depressed area between the beer store and this property. Whatever can be done to preserve those trees, that would be very helpful. But I was again grateful to see the architect's drawing, because it looked a lot better than just the blocky building. Thanks.
Yes. Any further comments on this one? Seeing none, then we'll move on to 10.3, site plan control application for 34 Huron Street, Southampton, for Huron Street South, Southampton. Any comments on this one? Don't see any. So the final one then is assumption of services for Northport Meadows Phase 1. Any comments on the report on Northport Meadows? I don't see any. All right, so the resolution then to adopt the consent agenda has been moved and seconded. All in favor? That is carried. So now we're on to bylaws. There are 4 bylaws there. Anybody wish to have any of the bylaws considered on its own? Seeing no request for that, then I'll read the resolution that bylaws 61-2026, 62-2026, 74-2026, and 75-2026 are hereby read, passed, and sealed this 13th day of July, 2026. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Grace. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. And the confirmatory bylaw, the bylaw 76-2026, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read, passed, and sealed this 13th day of July, 2026. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Davinsky, seconded by anybody helping. All in favor? That is carried. And finally, I have a resolution, this regular council meeting of July 13th, 2026, hereby adjourns at 10:22 p.m. Mover and seconder, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Halpin. All in favor? Council stands adjourned. Have a good evening, everybody.